Chapter 44:14. A little golden light at first glance. Immediately afterwards, the sword was full of energy, and the starry sky was covered. At this moment, wherever everyone can see, there is only darkness, as if it was in the long night of eternity. There is only one golden light that keeps lighting up. This golden light is like the first light between heaven and earth before the rising sun, like the first power opened up by chaos, blurring all darkness and tearing it all. This beam of light is getting brighter and brighter. In the end, it took everyone's pupils violently. Replaced everything. Cut! A cold voice sounded, and then everyone just felt a flower in front of them, and the golden light flashed through them like a thunder between heaven and earth, and beheaded towards the heaven supreme. Today's sword unparalleled, and then show the breaking dawn sword move, how much stronger than before. In addition to breaking through the rising waters brought by the Supreme, in the virtual space of the Tai Luo Jiandian, Jian Wushuang and the Tai Luo Supreme have played against each other for 10,000 years. His understanding of the Tai Luo Jiandian has been improved too much. In those 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang and Taro Supreme have fought nearly 8,000 times, and each time they fought, it is equal to Taro Supreme teaching. Nearly 8,000 fights. It is equivalent to nearly 8,000 teaching sessions. How terrible! Even if it is an uncivilized pig, one thing can be achieved after 8,000 repetitions of one thing, let alone a talented person with excellent instincts such as Jian Wushuang. It can be said that Jian Wushuang's comprehension of Yongye and Daybreak Yijian nowadays, not to mention the pinnacle, but definitely reached the point where the fire is innocent and familiar. Rumble! Daybreak Jingguang quickly approached the bloody Supreme, dragging a long white wave in the void. Swords warriors! Suddenly, Bloody Sky shrinks his pupils, exhausting his whole body power, drinking, Supreme God, Gore's wrath. The voice fell, and he saw the painful and fearful faces on his stomach, neck, and legs, all with open mouths and growls. The stern roar sounded, as if the evil spirit was being punished in hell, and he continued to make sharp screams, and a wave of horrible sounds spread. Their expressions became more struggling and painful. Immediately afterwards, he saw that Blood Heaven Supreme took a deep breath, like a whale sucking water, and a small lake-like vortex appeared in his mouth. Countless arms and faces on his body were all under this inhalation, pouring into his mouth. The next moment, he saw that the cheeks on both sides of Shuetin Supreme's cheeks bulged quickly, like a dormant toad about to attack, protruding two meatballs. Countless energies are twisted and condensed in the Sky Supreme mouth. Go die! Blood Heaven Supreme opened his mouth, and a ball with a foul odor soared out of his mouth like a missile. Roar, roar, roar! This blood-colored sphere is bigger and taller than the sun. With the rolling of this blood-colored sphere, everything in the universe seems to be overshadowed and cannot be compared with it. Apart from that golden light. Instantly, this golden light slammed into this sphere fiercely. A shock wave surged out, which directly caused a million-magnitude earthquake, and the surrounding void was like glass smashed by a sledgehammer, breaking apart inch by inch. Sword unparalleled, I see you die this time. Blood Day Supreme laughter. Now, in order to slay the sword unparalleled, he has cut off the road, crazy enough to pay no cost. Broken! An indifferent voice came from the dawning golden light. Immediately afterwards, I saw this golden light sword that cuts across the heavens and the earth, and plunged into the ball. Zizi! A horrible sound was emitted from the blood-colored ball, and everyone watching the distance felt that the eyes were just a flower, and saw that Jian Wushuang rushed out from the other end of the blood-colored ball, directly like a sugar gourd, and penetrated from the middle. Sharp and overbearing. This is the characteristic brought by the Taro Excalibur as the main ancestor to kill. If it is Wu Cry Excalibur, under the squeeze of this blood-colored ball, I am afraid that it will not be able to persist and be fragmented for a long time. After all, this is a peerless murderer enough to suppress the universe. The next moment, I saw the dawning golden light, and then rushed out of the blood-colored sphere, and continued to strike the body of Blood Heaven Supreme in a forward and backward posture, passing it directly. Do not Bloody Supreme's face finally burst into a terrible color, making a scream of heartbreaking. Immediately afterwards, everyone saw the cosmic starry sky of the great dark sky, and gradually recovered its clarity. The figure of Jian Wushuang has appeared behind the Supreme of Blood. Jin Guang gradually dissipated, revealing the sword Wushuang's unhappiness and grief, his 5 knuckle show fingers, holding the hilt of the sword of Tai Luo, and looked back slightly. Click. I saw that Blood Heaven Supreme was originally as tall as a mountain of meatball gods, and a huge humanoid cavity was opened in the middle, and countless violent winds roared through this cavity. Immediately after, cracks opened from the edge of the blood hole on his stomach, like a spider web, and numerous cracks extended out densely. Finally, after a loud noise, the blood god's supreme blood demon body exploded. Countless green juices and blood fell, like a blood rain in the air, and the stench smelled. Suddenly, the hearts of countless monks watching the battle in the distance were shocked, staring blankly at this scene. One sword killed? Blood Heaven Supreme is completely invincible to Jian Wushuang? Blood Heaven Supreme is the leader of the Supreme. He was even slain by the sword Wushuang, who entered the state of Supreme. At this moment, countless people were choking in their throats, speechless. Bloody Supreme defeated. The overlord of the asteroid group, who has nearly 1,000 chaos eras, overlooks the heavens and the earth, and finally loses. Countless eyes focused on Jian Wushuang. In the eyes of everyone, it seems that under a big sunset, a round of brighter rises. They know that this asteroid group with 3 teachings and 9 streams and nearly 10,000 practitioners has since changed owners. And in the universe, the Blood Temple, which has changed the color of countless people, will no longer exist. At this moment, countless people's faces were extremely complicated. Alas! No one has noticed that after the deity of Blood Heaven Supreme exploded, a blood was quietly shot towards the distance. That is the Supreme of Blood. It is also his last life-saving magical power. The sword is unparalleled. Qingshan does not change the green long stream. After this seat recovers, it is still unknown who will kill the deer. In this blood of God, the voice of supreme venom in the blood heaven resounded. Suddenly, he seemed to have hit something and slammed. Okay. The blood of God rolled. Blood Heaven Supreme looked up and saw Jian Wushuang looking down at him facelessly. Where do you want to go? An indifferent voice came out of Jian Wushuang's mouth. How did you find me? Suddenly Blood Heaven Supreme is cold all over the body. For the first time I feel the great terror between life and death. The next moment he saw the sword extended his hands without expression, and grabbed him. No. Sword Wushuang do. My day is willing to submit to you, please go around me. At this time, what resentment, what top dignity, all disappeared. In the Blood Heaven Supreme heart, only the fear of death was left, begging Jian Wushuang to spare his life. However, nothing worked. Rumble. The surging divine power was squeezed out from the palm of Sword's unparalleled palm, and the blood of the Supreme God of Blood was transformed directly into crushed powder. Bloody Supreme is dead. Chapter 44:15. Blood Heaven is dead. This giant arm figure who once stood at the peak of the universe and was the leader of one of the forces, died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Above the starry sky, Jian Wushuo stood with his hands on his back, black hair flying all over his eyes, the flames in his eyes, and his cool and stern face indifferent. Countless stars were stepped under him, as if the Ling Chen was the master of the stars. For a moment, everyone in the entire asteroid group opened their mouths, and there was no sound. Blood Heaven Supreme ruled them for nearly 1,000 chaos periods, and their fear of Blood Heaven Supreme has been imprinted in their bones. They never thought that one day the Supreme Bloody Heaven would fall into the hands of others. All this came too suddenly, like a dream, giving a sense of unreality. Until a long time later, after Jian Wushuang stepped on the sky and left, they slowly returned to God, and then looked at each other, boiling instantly. Falling down. Blood Sky Supreme, this optimistic superstar, has fallen down. It seems that Jian Wushuang has broken through the Supreme now, I'm afraid to clear the old accounts one by one. Yes, if I guessed it right, Blood God Supreme is just the beginning. At the beginning, the 6 forces of Jian Wushuang were hunted down, and none of them would be missed. It seems that something big is going on in the universe. Countless people think of this, and their hearts are trembling. Immediately afterwards, the news that Jian Wushuang came out to kill the Blood Heaven Supreme spread at an extremely fast speed and swept the entire universe. Immediately, there was an uproar in the universe as if a bombshell had been dropped. Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. Ah, boy, I knew he could succeed. In the hall that has always been somber, there was a loud laughter of bleeding waves. In the early hours of this morning, news spread into the Temple of Life. The sword unparalleled in the asteroid group. One sword killed the Lord of the Blood Temple, the top supreme blood god, and the whole universe shook. The King of 9 Robbers, the Supreme Axe, and the core members of the Sword Alliance all sat on both sides, and they also smiled when they heard the words. Jian Wushuang, if you don't do it, you will be shocked when you do it. King Jiujia shook his head and said that his expression was helpless and he was happy for Jian Wushuang. Blood Sky Supreme is among the top, and they are all outstanding. This place will be tricky to deal with, and it is unexpected that Jian Wushuang can already kill him with his own strength. The giant axe sighed with emotion, then looked at the Blood Wave supremely and said with a smile, Blood, I'm afraid Jian Wushuang's current power is no longer under you and me. Blood Wave Supreme nodded with a smile and replied, Yeah, in my opinion, it won't be long before the Sword Warriors are able to grow to the point where it is enough to protect my life. This kid's talent is really terrifying. The Supreme Masters laughed at each other, but they were the overlords of the Sword Alliance, and they seemed to be thinking about it, and their expressions were a little worried. Seeing this, Xuanbo could not help laughing and asked, Bawang Xiaoyu, what are you worried about? Could it still be that Shi Huai feels that Jian Wushuang has gone this time without bringing you? The overlord heard the words and quickly converged his thoughts and replied, This is not true. Since the Lord has done so, he naturally has his consideration. Oh, little King Na, why are you looking sad? Blood Wave Supreme couldn't help but be a little surprised. The overlord took a deep breath and replied, Blood Supreme, now everyone knows that the Supreme Lord beheaded and killed the Supreme Master of Blood. Many people have expected that the Supreme Lord wants to bring those 6 forces one by one. I came to the door, and now I am afraid of other forces. I have already prepared. I am worried that the Lord, will be in an ambush. Blood Wave Supreme heard the words. His face did not appear as worried as the overlord imagined, but he reached out and patted his shoulder, looking through the door of the Supreme Temple, looking to the distant void, smiling slightly. Overlord Xiaoyu, you can rest assured that you can think of Sword Wushuang naturally. We don't need to worry about these, as long as we wait here and wait for the good news of Jian Wushuang. The tyrant heard a moment's silence, then said with a bitter smile, So too. After the news of Jian Wushuang's slaying and killing the Blood Heaven Supreme spread, the entire universe, which had been slightly calm, once again fell into turmoil. In the depths of the universe, the temple is too empty. Huh? Bingyu Supreme slaps the throne of the throne and smashes it. His face is green, miscellaneous. This sword is unparalleled. We haven't bothered him yet. How dare he come to our trouble? Does he really think he is a character? The sound of Bingyu Supreme was full of deep anger. Under him, the Supreme, who was originally packed full of seats, had no more than 10, and only 2 or 3 kittens remained. The Lord of the Temple is angry. One of the Supremes of the Taishu Shrine quickly soothed. With this remark, the Ice Cream Supreme, which was originally unsightly, became even more ugly. This seat has been said many times. This seat is now the emperor of the Taishu Temple, not the owner of the temple. Bingyu looked at him coldly. Suddenly, the several supreme people present heard the words, looked at each other, and sighed in their hearts. Since Bingyu Supreme himself personally failed to stab Jian Wushuang, he was even humiliated in public by Mao's ancestors. After a punch, he became more moody and grumpy. I know. The Supreme nodded his head, and then said with a little worry, Master God, the sword is unparalleled nowadays. I'm afraid that we will come to the door if we don't have time. We better prepare early. Get ready early? Just rely on his sword unparalleled? Bingyu Supreme heard a contemptuous sneer and shook his head. You think that this seat is a day that waste can't be achieved? This seat will be afraid of a swordless match? If he doesn't come, it's fine. If he dares to come, this seat will tell him to come. Return. This. Several Supremes heard the words, their faces flashed with hesitation, and they felt that Bingyu Supreme was a little too conceited. Seeing this, Bingyu Extreme saw their thoughts at a glance, and couldn't help humming. I see that you are frightened by the sword warriors. He can't be better than the Supreme Master, can he be stronger? This seat? What a shame. After a cold glance at the Supremes, Bingyu Supreme strode out. In the hall, these Supremes heard a bitter laughter and looked at each other face to face, but they felt that they could rely on a sword and they would not cause trouble to the Taishu Temple. After all, they had only half of them. In addition to the invincible practice, there are other whole cards. Thinking of this, they were slightly relieved, but for some reason, they still felt uneasy inside. Chapter 44:16. At the same time. In the universe. A cosmic boat was sailing through the stars, breaking through the nebula all the way. This cosmic boat is not fast, and it is quite leisurely. In the spacecraft, a young man with a cold face wearing a black robe was sitting cross-legged, playing with the jade tube in his hand. This person is naturally the sword unparalleled, and this jade tube is when he left the Temple of Life, and was handed to him by the Supreme Master of Blood, which recorded the detailed information of the 6 forces. If it wasn't for this jade tube, the Blood God Supreme Division of Blood Demon would be recorded. Maybe he would have escaped. Jian Wushuang raised his head and sighed slightly. There is no weak person who can reach the top of the Supreme. The Blood Heaven Supreme not only has great strength and frequent means, but also has a supernatural talent similar to his divine power decomposition. However, it can also be calculated from this. My current strength is definitely far above the top. Jian Wushuang thought of this, could not help but smile. This time against the Supreme Master of Blood, he finally got a general understanding of his strength. Now I can rely on the chaos-domineering body alone to be able to harden the top Supreme. For example, he and the Blood Heaven Palace Master and others can fight against each other. And if you use the Taro Excalibur, you have the ability to kill the top extreme. And this is not the case with the killer. For example, the last 3 styles of Terra Sword Code, Dusk, for Seasons, Taro. These 3 types of Kendo supernatural powers, but one move is more powerful than one move. I am afraid that once they are used, they will be able to instantly reach the level of the Supreme Master of Blood Heaven Palace. My current combat strength should be above the top, but not yet the level of invincibility. Jian Wu's eyes revealed the meaning of contemplation. Since he practiced, he can be considered to have seen a lot of invincible Supreme shots, such as Gafu Supreme, such as Diyu Shrine Lord Blackfeather Supreme, such as Patriarchs and so on. Among them, no matter what, they have the power to kill the top Supreme. In front of them, the top Supreme is not a chicken and a dog. Even if the dragon family, Longbai, who had broken through the invincible Supreme soon, was in the battlefield of the Life Shrine at first, but with a slight bump, the Bloodwave Supreme, Great Axe Supreme, and Jiujia King were all repelled. Then my current strength should be half-step invincible and supreme, and even better by 1 point. Jian Wu's eyes revealed the gods. After a moment, Jian Wushuang converged his thoughts and opened the 2nd page of the bamboo tube. The information recorded above is the Great Kingdom of the Sun. Great Sun God Kingdom. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, and there was a cold flash in his eyes. Boom! The next moment, the spacecraft accelerated suddenly and disappeared into the starry sky. Deep in the universe, the country of the great Japanese god has a vast territory and occupies the 3-star domains. God rules tens of billions of people in the country. In the universe, it is a well-known old-fashioned power. Since the last emperor of the great Japanese sun annihilated in the aftermath of the Holocaust, although the strength of the great Japanese nation has shrunk a lot, it still cannot be underestimated. Today, It is the time for the worship of the ancestors of the great gods. The sacrifice ceremony is a grand event that will be held for every 100 chaotic times of the great Japanese god kingdom, praising the founding emperor of the great Japanese god kingdom and a series of feats. Therefore, in the city of King Dairajan today, the lanterns are bright and colorful, whether it is some sects that belong to Dairajan's domestic rule or other forces that have always been good with the kingdom of Dairajan. Today, all kinds of expensive gifts are brought to Dei King City to congratulate. In the middle of the King's City, there is a towering hall, which is the palace of the kingdom of God. Tianji Shinzong, carrying 10 capsules of Huaden pill, attacking 20 top-quality treasures, and 500,000 universe source stones, came to congratulate the great sun god kingdom. Yuding is supreme, with 10 stars, come to congratulate the great kingdom of God. A long voice of the servants of Secretary Li Jian sounded a long time ago. In the early morning, representatives of the various forces who had made good relations with the great sun god kingdom came. In the Golden Palace Hall of the Imperial Palace, the great Emperor of the Sun sits on the throne. Followed by the messengers who came to visit, until the very end, was the Prince of the great sun god kingdom. Everyone talked and laughed and pointed out the rivers and mountains, so please. Daily, have you heard of the recent event in the universe? After 3 rounds of drinking, a strong man looked at the Emperor Dairy and said with a smile, "Extreme rainforest, are you talking about Jian Wushuang's killing the Lord of the Blood Temple?" The Emperor Dairy heard the words, and the smile on his face sank slowly, and he asked, "Good." The Rainforest Supreme nodded his head, reminding in good faith, "Dairy, you are not far away from the Blood Temple. You have to be careful that Jian Wushuang came to find trouble. Today's sword matchless climate has become, there are a lot of supreme presents, but if the sword matchless, there is really a bun in my heart." The Emperor Dairy nodded his head when he heard the words. He is also a top supreme practitioner. In terms of strength, it is not much different from the Blood Heaven Palace Lord. Since Jian Wushuang can cut and kill the Blood Heaven Palace Lord, it means that Jian Wushuang has the ability to kill him. Taking a deep breath, the Emperor Dari looked at the old man who was sitting next to him and said, "Everyone is assured that the king has already prepared and specially invited the Yuding Supreme to come to shelter. And Yuding the Supreme has promised the king that if Jian Wushuang dares to come to trouble, he will kill Jian Wushuang." After a pause, the Emperor of the Sun looked at Yuding Supreme and said with a slight smile, "Yuding Supreme, are you right? This Jade Ding Supreme is thin and thin, with silver hair running through a wooden clog and dangles behind his head. Yes, there is an old man here, and that sword is unparalleled." The Yuding Supreme nodded his head, his face proud. Some other Supreme heard a sigh of relief. Yuding Supreme is a long-established veteran Supreme in the universe. As early as hundreds of prehistoric times, he has broken into the half-step invincible Supreme cultivation. With him, there is no need to fear the sword. Now that the Emperor of the Sun has asked Yuding to take the shot, everything is fine. It's okay if the sword Wushuang does not come. If it does, the Supreme Master Yuding will just teach him. The sword Wushuang in the province is really lawless, thinking that no one in this world can overcome him. With Yuding Supreme, I can rest assured that the drink is unparalleled, not enough. A sound of disdain and laughter sounded, and the palace resumed lively again, and between words, there was full of disdain and contempt for the sword unparalleled. Among them a prince in a luxurious brocade, with a magnificent appearance, even got up and said, "Father, there is only one sword unparalleled in the world. Why should the Supreme Master Yuding shoot? If he dares to come, he can chop his head under the sword with a baby." After hearing this, the great emperor laughed and laughed. "It is not easy for my son to have such courage. After he inherits our position, he will be able to achieve a grand domination. Only the little thief of Jian Wushuang the strength is indeed good. It is not long before you broke through the Supreme. You should first solidify your solidity, and then talk about sword killing." The prince heard the words, with respect in his mouth, but he was quite dissatisfied. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang was the same as him, but only broke through the supreme realm, and he could not be stronger. "Well, if this sword is unparalleled, It will not have to say anything if it doesn't have a too strong sword. The prince hummed in his heart. Chapter 44:17. At the same time. A handsome young man wearing a large black robe with a sword hanging around his waist and a bucket hat, blocking most of his face, and only showing his chin, has stepped into the city of King Sunday. It's a bustling city. Jian Wushuang stepped on the royal road and looked around casually. This great king of the Sun City occupies almost half of the planet's location with a very wide area, but it does not look empty at all, but is particularly lively. Someone kept rushing past him and discussing with each other. Hurry up, this ancestor worship ceremony. The palace is said to have taken out hundreds of divine medicine to reward the world. Speaking of the day when the old emperor abdicated and the new emperor ascended the throne, as a result, the young Emperor Shao was slain by the sword unparalleled in the ancient sky and everything became a dream bubble. You said, will Jian Wushuang come on the day of great joy? Who knows, but I heard that Lord Emperor has invited the strong to sit in the royal palace, and if the swordsman dares to come, he can teach him to come back. Don't talk about this, don't talk about this. I will go to the palace and fight for the potion and the source stone of the universe. What is the relationship between these big men and me? That's right, let's hurry up and don't let others take the lead. There was a rush of discussion, and Jian Wushou lost his hand, and no one could recognize him. Is today the ceremony of the great kingdom of the sun? Is the strong still invited? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I don't know if this great Japanese emperor would like the gift he gave. While thinking about it, Jian Wushuang walked towards the Dairy Imperial Palace. There were more pedestrians along the way, all in a hurry. Among them, a master carrying an axe saw Jian Wushuang leisurely and was not anxious. He also kindly reminded, "Little brother, you have to hurry up, otherwise you will have nothing more." Jian Wushuang smiled back and said, "Anyway, I'm not going to collect the rewards, I'm going to give gifts." The master who carried the axe could not help but hesitated, and immediately shook his head, saying no more, and rushing forward. There are 9 gates and 3 doors in the imperial palace. The side doors on both sides are for ordinary monks to walk, and this time is also used to distribute rewards. The middle arch, this time, is used to greet the congratulatory messenger. Only those who have received the invitation from the Emperor of the Sun can enter. Stop here. As soon as Jian Wushuang reached the gate of the middle palace, the 2 gods who ultimately dominated the realm held the halberd in his hand and blocked him. Can you have an invitation? The 2 gods will speak coldly. No. Jian Wushuang wore a dipper, only revealed a chin and replied slightly. That's where the prizes come? The prizes are at the side doors on both sides, and they quickly retreat. The 2 gods looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, seeing that his breath was unusual, not like a big man, and he suddenly scolded. Jian Wushuang laughed and heard, "I'm here to congratulate you." Then you pick it up, and let me wait to confirm my identity. The 2 gods would look at each other and said, "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then slowly took off the bucket hoe. A cold and sober face suddenly appeared. The next moment, a thunderous sound exploded. Swords of life Jingu sword, come to watch and congratulate. Boom. Suddenly, the sound shook for thousands of miles, and the city was uproar. What? Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang is here. No. Stop him and sue the Lord. Suddenly, the 2 gods were shocked, and their faces turned pale. Jian Wushuang's name is really too big, the supreme number of hands that died in his hands, and there are even giant arms such as the Blood Heaven Palace Lord. The major monks who received the reward in the distance were equally shocked. The axe-resistant monk who had greeted Jian Wushuang before, even his eyes fell down in amazement and gazed at his eyes. He's Jian Wushuang? The 2 gods will hit a stunner and yell, "Quickly start the moat." After that, they took a shot with both palms and retreated into the palace with countless divine powers. A scorching big day rose rapidly from the center of the palace. Immediately, countless gods radiated around this big day, forming a mask like an eggshell, protecting the entire palace. Rejecting customers outside the door, is this the way to treat the great kingdom of God? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows lightly, immediately stepped on his feet, his body suddenly rose into the sky, turned into a golden light, and swept across the entire palace. Huh! The next moment, Jian Wushuang bowed his head and looked down at the entire palace, stepping down with his right foot. Bang! Suddenly, a surge of violent violence surging to the extreme, with Jian Wushuang's right foot, hit the mask that sheltered the palace severely. In a short time, the entire city of King Day's son was like an earthquake, and it was shaken in madness. The palace in the center of King Day's son was a flat boat rolling in the sea of anger, as if it was about to break. Sword of Life Jingu Sword, come to congratulate and observe the ceremony of King Dari. Jian Wushuang's indifferent voice blew again. The residents in the entire city of Dari King felt like they had been bombarded in their ears, making them deaf. Inside the Sun Palace, the Emperor Dari, who was drinking and having fun, suddenly changed his face. Sword unparalleled. Jack! The Emperor Dari suddenly got up and stood up. His face was extremely gloomy. Snapped. The wine glass in his hand was severely dropped on the ground by him, shattered. Jian Wushuang will come, he is no more surprised. But today, it is the ancestor ceremony. This is too much. Yuding Supreme. The Emperor Dari took a deep breath, turned his head to look at Yuding Supreme, and arched his hand. The expression of Yuding Supreme was indifferent. When he saw this, he nodded slightly with his jaw. He drank the wine in the cup in a hurry and said, "Rest assured, if you have this seat today, that sword is unsurpassed. You can't go to it. He is against the enemy, and if he loses, he will shoot." That would be good. The Emperor of the Day was slightly relieved when he heard the words. As soon as he was about to go out to meet the enemy, he saw the Emperor of the Day sitting at the end and stood up and said, "The father is a little calm and restless. The sword is unparalleled, but it's just a superb elementary realm, and it's just a matter of training with the baby. Why should the father give him a shot? Well, you'll meet him when he sees him, and see how capable he is. How dare he be so arrogant?" Having said that, the Japanese prince strode toward the palace. "My son must be." Seeing that his face changed greatly, the Emperor of the Great Sun was about to stop, and he saw the steps of the Emperor of the Great Sun. He had turned into a streamer and flew into the sky. Oops! The Emperor Dari only sank with a single heart, and did not dare to delay, and hurriedly chased after the Emperor Day. 3 heads. Chapter 44:18. On the Great Palace of the Kingdom of God. The sword is unparalleled, with black hair flying, and under him, the towering city of Dari is like an ant. At this moment, tens of thousands of people in the king's city of Dari looked up at Jian Wushuang, their hearts trembled. They did not expect that Jian Wushuang would break into the Japanese palace directly in such a domineering manner, without any fear. Is this sword? Sure enough, it's a pride. I've heard that swords have been practiced for 700,000 years without both parties, and they can step on the great kingdom of God, which is really awesome. Just like her husband. Countless people looked at the figure of Jian Wushuang in the king's city of Dari, and they all spoke. Bold. At this moment, a young man with a handsome face wearing a Genoa suit rushed out of the palace in one step. The sword is unparalleled. This is the forbidden area of the palace. How dare you be brazen? The Chinese youth looked coldly at Jian Wushuang and scolded him. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and asked lightly, "Who are you? The great emperor of the sun? Guanai, the great prince of the 7 kingdoms of God, Haoji." Jian Wushuang, just because you want to see my father? Haoji Prince shook his sleeve and said coldly, "Prince Haoji is here." Prince Haoji has recently broken through the elementary supreme, and it is very likely that he will inherit the position of emperor. Don't say that, just talking about the gas field, Prince Haoji never loses sword unparalleled. There was a discussion in the city, and there was no expression on Prince Haoji's face, but there was a sense of contentment in his eyes. Why did he volunteer to come out first? Didn't he just want the immediate effect? Sword unparalleled, you quickly retreat, and that's it for today. If you dare to dominate here again, don't blame me for being polite to you. Prince Haoji said with a heavy hum. This humming, suddenly like a thunder blast, thunder and thunder, has already used the supreme divine power, so that the entire city of Dari Wang, a shock. You're welcome. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help but laugh and said, even if this is your dad, the emperor, I am afraid to tell me now, where do you dare to threaten me? Presumptuous. After hearing this, Prince Haoji was furious and screamed, you are the one who dare to insult my father? You are the only one who dares to insult my father? You alone say and rely on the Terra Excalibur villain, but you dare not use it. Fighting alone? Are you worth it? Jian Wushuang sneered scornfully, too lazy to talk to him again, and shook his head, go back and let your father come to see me. The words fell, Jian Wushuang pointed at one hand, and went towards the bullet of Emperor Haoji. There was a trembling sound in the void. A sword gas condensed at the fingertips of the sword unparalleled, and then shot out suddenly, turning into a slap, as if rolling into a black wave, across the sky 10 miles, banging on the face of Prince Haoji. Huh! Suddenly, a scarlet slap print was printed on Prince Haoji's face, and the whole person was beaten by this palm with eyes staring at Venus. The next moment, a huge force exploded on his face, blasting him into the palace like a meteor, smashing into countless temples, and trembling to the extreme. In the city of King Day, a mass of people looked at this scene, and all of them were petrified. Prince Haoji just so clamored, and the result is just a slap, then it's gone? What just happened? Here, this special lady is purely to give people away. The crowd swallowed and said in shock. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, neither sad nor unhappy. For him today, the monks below the Supreme could not even make him interested. And just then, a crackling roar suddenly sounded. Swords warriors! Boom! A majestic middle-aged man wearing a crown and wearing a dragon robe rose from the palace, staring at Jian Wushuang violently. This person is a great emperor of the sun. Jian Wushuang, you kill my young emperor first, and now you destroy my palace at the ceremony of ancestor worship of your king, and seriously hurt my son. It is too bullying. Emperor Tairi spoke furiously. A horrible atmosphere, like an angry ocean, constantly set off a raging wave and slapped the quartet. This breath is from the same origin as Prince Haoji, but it is much stronger, not at all in a grade. That's kind of interesting. Jian Wushuang nodded his head in admiration. The divine emperor had a strong and powerful divine power, much stronger than that of the blood god. Immediately, Jian Wu's eyes turned, looking at the emperor of the sun, as if he heard some of the world's most funny jokes, sneer and sneer. Too much bullying? At the beginning, your 6 major forces chased me from the starry sky to the Temple of Life, and in the end they killed me, and even brought the Temple of Life to peace. The White Tiger Supreme fell and covered Fu Zhizhuang fell asleep, and countless apprentices of the palace died. Do you remember this account? Ever thought of bullying too much? You now say that my sword is so deceptive, it's a joke. Speaking of the back, sword Wushuang is heavier than one word, just like the thunder of a thunder, and deafening. He came to pacify the 6 major forces this time, not only for him, but also for those who guarded the life shrine, guarded his sword unparalleled, and were killed by the shrine disciples. If he does not settle these 6 forces in a day, he will feel uneasy all day. When the Emperor Dai's son heard a change in his expression, he couldn't say anything to refute Jian Wushuang, and he had to rattle his teeth. Jian Wushuang, I wouldn't say nonsense. My king might as well tell you that today you can't get out of this big king of the sun. After taking a deep breath, the emperor in the sun shone brightly. Is it? Jian Wushuang sneered, slowly holding the hilt of the Taro Excalibur in his hand, and said, God Emperor, ready to catch the gift from my sword Wushuang. Gift for me? What gift? Dari narrowed his eyes, his body full of divine power, behind him, turned into a round of hot sun. Send you to death. Boom! Suddenly, the Taro Excalibur came out. A huge, horrible sword pressure came to the audience instantly, full of sword energy. Under the pressure of this sword, it is like the king of swords coming to the world. All the monks with swords in the entire city of Dari are instantly released from their hands, shoot at high altitude, and bow their heads toward the Taro sword. Novel. In just a few interest rates, the city is full of 3-foot swords. What? How could this be? My sword! For a moment, the audience first fell into silence and then throbbed. Everyone was wide-eyed, staring at the scene where Wan came. In that void, the heavenly sword forest columns, like courtiers, are suspended under the Taro sword. The Tai Luo divine sword, one of the 7 stalks of the great ancestors born when the universe was developed, is the first ancestor of the sword. And the sword unparalleled holding the Tai Luo divine sword is like the peerless sword coming to the world. The eyebrows are cold and not stained with earth. Chapter 44:19. Kill. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, and the whole man shot up, holding the sword and killing the Emperor of the Sun. One step, one Jian moves. At the foot of Jian Wushuang, like the thousands of exquisite swords that Rian came home to, all the swords are turned, converging like long dragons, stepped on by Jian Wushuang, and slammed into the great emperor. This sword cuts across the sky, and the sea of clouds is directly split. And the sword, unparalleled championed by Qianjian, is like stepping on the top of a fairy, proud of the world's auspicious archery sword god, raising his right hand and slashing down towards the Emperor of the Sun. Raise your hand to open the sky. Good job. The great Emperor of the Sun wasn't afraid, but he laughed loudly, and his hands were full of red light, just like the eternal fucking holding the sun and moon to pick the stars, and collided away with the sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled. Originally you broke through the Supreme. This seat has planned to write off the old account with you. Who knows you are so uninterested, dare to come to the door. Then no wonder this seat left you today. Noise. Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were cold, and the Kaitian Jianmeng, which was split openly, shook up with the magnificent rays of the sky, and the profound intention of the kendo broke out, but it was directly disintegrated. Jian Wushuang's understanding of kendo has reached an extremely terrifying level in the inheritance of Tai Luo's supreme kendo heritage. Jian Wushuang, your talent is truly outstanding. Whether it is the understanding of magical powers or the use of avenues, it is above the king. But unfortunately, you have forgotten one point, that is, you can be stronger, and you are still the ultimate supreme. The total amount of divine power between the two of us is not at the same level. This gap, even if you are the perfect chaotic creature, cannot be crossed. Oh! Emperor Dari snorted, and in the palm of his hands, 2 small suns sprang up at the same time. A lot of violent divine power broke out, breaking the sword unparalleled into the sky. Thousands of exquisite swords gathered at the feet of Jian Wu, gathered together to grow dragons, were scattered and turned back in all directions. Sure enough. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes when he saw this, showing an interested look. The strength of this great Japanese emperor and the Lord of the Blood Celestial Palace is probably between Bo Zhong, but the way of fighting is quite different. The Lord of the Blood Temple, like a poisonous snake entangled in a dark corner, vomiting a letter, intending to throw a fatal blow at any time. The great Emperor of the Sun, it was a big opening and closing, the attack power burst, and it fell 10 times in one fell swoop. Come! Sword warrior twisted his neck, hunting warfare in his eyes, and grabbed again towards the great Emperor of the Sun. Huh! The sword Wushuang Yijian fell off and was gripped by the Emperor Dari. His right leg was swept like a whip, and hit the Emperor's waist fiercely. A muffled noise came, and a huge shock came from the Emperor's son Ri, slamming the sword's right leg slightly apart, smirking. Jian Wushuang, don't take this as the seat. I don't know that you awakened the indestructible overlord, but it's a pity that the king's divine deity is also one of the eternal deities. Much higher than you. Is it? There was a slight surprise in Jian Wu's eyes. To know that his foot was enough to trample thousands of mountains and have trillions of tons of power, let alone the ordinary supreme take it, It was just an injury. However, the look in Jian Wu's eyes quickly restored calmness. With his right hand slung away, the sharp taro sword cut the hands of the great Emperor of the Sun directly, and then stabbed forward again. Humph! Emperor Dairi snorted slightly, stepped back a few steps, and avoided the sword. However, before waiting for his hands to be reorganized, Jian Wushuang's indifferent figure flashed, like a ghost, has dragged a long series of afterimages, appeared behind him, and attacked again. Tear it. The next moment, Tai Luo's Excalibur ripped a long hole on the body of Dari, and numerous blood was shot out. Why so fast? Emperor Dairi shrank his pupils. Suddenly furious, hands regrouped, holding two small suns, and raised his fist to kill the sword unparalleled. Ha! One after another, the sound of blasts came, and Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. Between the movements, the taro sword in his hand kept waving, and he opened the mouth after mouth on the Emperor of the Sun. Swordsmanship does not need to be so powerful, it only needs the simplest chopping and stabbing to kill its enemies. This is Taro Supreme. In the virtual space, it takes 10,000 years to hand over to Jian Wushuang. What? The Emperor Day Sun was furious to the extreme, his eyes staring at the void around him. On him, there were dense sword marks, and countless blood overflowed from the sword marks, and a blood rain fell. The sword art of Sword Unparalleled is really too clever and mysterious, far beyond his imagination. No matter how he bombards wildly, the figure of Sword Unparalleled, like a ghost, keeps moving, resisting, or hiding. He launched thousands of attacks, tearing the sword marks of 3 inches into his bones. He wanted to perform amazing magical powers, but once cast, let us not say what would happen to Jian Wushuang, but he worked hard for nearly 1,000 chaos eras, and the great King of the Sun, a land of millions of miles, will be destroyed and no longer existence. Millions of people will shed blood into rivers, turn them into dead bones, and destroy them once. Swords warriors. The teeth of the Emperor Dairi rattled, and the whole person turned into a man, and was about to crack. Breaking dawn. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. He turned a deaf ear to the roar of the great Emperor of the Sun, and directly performed the Breaking Dawn sword technique, turning it into an unrivaled sharp golden light, passing through the chest of the great god's body. Suddenly, Emperor Tairi turned his face into a waxy yellow, and the whole person was teetering, almost falling from the air. Fortunately, the big sun body of the Big Sun Emperor is much tougher than that of the Blood Temple. Under the endless twist of endless power, the sharp sword energy bursting out of Jian Wushuang in his body force suppressed. But Rao is so, the Emperor of the Sun has lost the power of World War I. DJI, if you can do just that, then get ready to die. Jian Wushuang stepped into the void, took a deep breath, and spit out 2 words, Chopper Star. Suddenly, the clouds rolling in the void, the turbulent wind, and the floating dust, all the temple houses in the king's city stood up, as if receiving instructions, gathered together towards the sword without hands, turned into the purest ability, forming the nearly blue forest blue swordman. The sword-cutting sword is the strongest killing sword created by Jian Wushuang. Cut! In the next moment, the sword of Tai Luo with no hands and the sword slashed, and the sword pressure was overbearing and mighty. Chapter 44:20. Inside the Sun King City. A sword across the sky, running through the sun and the moon. All the people who noticed this scene were all shocked and did not dare to channel, "Duh, is the Emperor's son defeated like this? Jian Wushuang is too strong." The strength is far from being comparable to the top supreme. Dali's Sun Emperor, will it be the second supreme to be slain by Sword Wushuang after the Lord of the Blood Temple? Every discussion sounded in the Imperial Palace of the Sun. Prince Haoji looked at this scene, but he was all cold, like falling into an ice cellar. Father King. His lips trembled, and at this moment he didn't even have the courage to stop Jian Wushuang. He and Jian Wushuang are both in the elementary state of supremacy, but until now he has only realized how big the gap between him and Jian Wushuang is. Above the Imperial Palace, Emperor Dairi looked at this glorious impossibly, and Mori sword covering the entire sky, his pupils could not help shrinking. He still has many supernatural powers at the bottom of the box, and there are many extreme treasures in the Qianquan ring. Taking a deep breath, the Emperor of the Sun looked down at the palace, screaming with all his strength, "Please ask Yuding Supreme to help." Laugh. The words fell, and there was no response from the palace, except that everything in the void seemed to be pressed with the pause button. The forest blue sword mangling with unmatched might was like being caught by an invisible hand. Can't fall in the slightest. Immediately, a sigh sounded lightly in the void. The next moment, I saw an old man wearing a robe, holding a duster and holding a clean face. His silver hair was with a wooden scoop, and he seemed to be walking out of the palace step by step. Every step he stepped on the void, without using any power, it was as if the heavens and the earth actively laid the steps for him and lifted him up. "Let's go." He glanced at Jian Wushuang lightly, without any emotional ups and downs on his face, just a gentle shake of the dust in his hands. The star-struck sword horse that struck the world suddenly felt like a sand painting swept by the wind. Far away, dissipated between nothingness. Yuding Supreme. After seeing his shot, the Emperor Day's son still had a frightened expression, and slowly recovered his calmness. He stood behind him respectfully and arched his hands. "Trusted loyalty. Day, leave it to this seat." Yuding Supreme nodded at him. "For you." Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He could feel that although the Jade Supreme looked simple and unobtrusive at first glance, if he looked closely, he would find that the person was integrated with the Heaven and Earth Avenue, full of the true meaning of the avenue. Without sending. When it comes to strength, this person is far more horrible than the Emperor Dari, but I am afraid that he has reached the half-step invincible state of supremacy. You Ding of this seat, you are young, you may not have heard of the name of this seat, but you go back and ask the Supreme Master of Blood in your Palace of Life, he will naturally tell you who this seat is. Yu Ding's expression was dull, and he looked at Jian Wushuang up and down and immediately said, "Sword Wushuang, your talent is truly outstanding. I heard that at the grand event of the universe, it is loved by the Lord God. If you can, this seat is unwilling. Hurt your life." After a pause, he calmly said, "Jian Wushuang, give this seat a face, and stop at this moment. The various resentments between you and Dari, but you first killed his son Shouty first, plus your original strength, it's really weak and heavy, and you will only be able to hit you in the future. Now that you are using the Supreme Avenue, you can write off all the past. This seat can be decided on behalf of Dari. As long as you retreat now, Eternal World will no longer step into the semi-divided kingdom of the Great God Kingdom. This seat will not hold you to the door today. How about insulting him?" After speaking, he also deliberately looked at the Emperor of the Sun and asked, "Darade, I have made this decision. Do you have any objection?" Emperor Dari quickly replied, "Everything follows your arrangement. As for today's Jian Wushuang, he really does not have the will to fight again. He just wants to invite this to kill him quickly." Yu Ding nodded with satisfaction, then looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, "Jian Wushuang, would you give this seat this face?" In his opinion, what Jian Wushuang needs is a step, and now he has given the steps, he is confident that the sword Wushuang will go down the steps. After all, if he really shot, then it will be unavoidable that there will be bullish discussions in the universe. If he wins, it is okay to say, after all, of course, if he loses, his supreme name of Yuding will be ruined. In the great King Sun City, countless people suddenly focused their eyes on Jian Wushuang's face, waiting for Jian Wushuang's answer. "Your face?" However, Jian Wushuang replied expressionlessly, "I'm sorry, my Jian Wushuang never acted as a bully when he acted in his life, but if he deceives me, I will pay back and return 100 times. In the beginning, the great Japanese goddess kingdom slaughtered thousands of disciples in my life shrine, causing many shrines to fall, and rewarding me with gold in the universe and asking me to be a leader. Now you give me a face in a simple sentence. Never mind?" In the sword without hands, the Tai Luo divine sword is horizontal, the point of the sword is pointed at Yuding Supreme, coldly, "I tell you the truth, the Emperor of the Sun is dead today, and you cannot protect him. If you are interested, you will be obedient. I won't care about you." If you want to protect him, then I'm sorry. Don't say that your face will not be given. Bold. Suddenly, Yu Ding's supreme complexion was iron blue, and there was a strong killing in his eyes. Yu Dingue is invincible and supreme, no matter where he goes. Which side of the hegemon, the giant arm of the sky, does not respect him? This sword Wushuang district is the elementary supreme, even dare to insult him? Are I bold? You can give it a try. Jian Wushuang looked at him coldly, without looking back. Okay Jian Wushuang, since you give your face shame, then don't blame me Yu Ding for not giving you a chance. Yu Ding Supreme spoke openly, then fluttered the dust. The whole person turned into a streamer, like a tide, billowing and rushing into the sky. Sword unparalleled, this seat is waiting for you outside the star. In the sky, the cold voice of Yu Ding Extreme came. It is good. Jian Wushuang glanced down at Dei King City. If the two started a war here, they were afraid that the entire star would be destroyed once and thousands of people would die. It is not his wish that there is a debt and a debtor. When Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, he instantly condensed endless sword energy, and the last sharp and brilliant Huang Jianmang sword into the sky and shot out of the stars. Chapter 44:21. Above the Imperial Palace. Emperor Dairy's face was gloomy and his eyes kept flashing. He didn't expect that Jian Wushuang would dare not even give Yu Ding's supreme face, and he was so determined to kill him. Father King. Prince Haoji flew up and stood next to the Emperor of the Sun, and said, Father King, it seems that Jian Wushuang has been determined to endlessly die with our great kingdom of God. In this case, we might as well catch up. While Jian Wushuang and Yu Ding Supreme are not paying attention, I wait for a joint shot and double-click kill. Oh! Emperor Tairi raised a brow and immediately nodded. Yes, if you can't kill Jian Wushuang today, you're afraid of endless troubles in the future. After that, the Emperor of the Sun flew into a rolling sun, like a fireball, chasing towards Jian Wushuang and Yu Ding Supreme. Prince Haoji is also not slow, followed closely. After a while, there was only a messy imperial city of Japan, many people, and concierges who came to watch the ceremony. Hurry up, but this battle is about the life and death of the great Sun God Kingdom. How can we not miss it? Yes. One is the first genius of the universe, and the other is the half-step invincible supreme who has been famous for a long time. This battle is destined to be very exciting. We will catch up soon. For a moment, after everyone looked at each other, they performed magical powers, or turned into glorious lights, or turned into gods, and flew towards the sky. The universe is boundless. Stars shone, and galaxies crossed. Sword unparalleled, you are too arrogant, do not understand the reason for just breaking. Yu Ding's expression was cold, holding a duster, and looking at the sword unparalleled. If you practice 100 chaos ages with all your heart, you will take it one step further, or you will reach the top of the supreme practice, then this one will never dare to intervene in this muddy water, or even worry about your existence. Even this great sun, the ancestral ceremony of the kingdom, will not participate. Unfortunately, you broke through the supremacy, and you are proud of yourself, and come to seek revenge. You are just seeking death. Is that so? Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, the purple eyes twinkled, and a frightful war broke out from him. Unfortunately, I was trying to be invincible and half-step invincible. Pinch my wrist. Yu Ding, let me see your ability, who in the end gave you the confidence and dare to intervene in my sword unparalleled thing. Huh! The words fell, and Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet, turning directly into a mighty daybreak Jianmeng, killing Yu Ding Supreme. The whole starry sky, only one golden light left. Oh, this sword move is in the Terra Sword Code? When Taro Supreme ruled the universe, I had the honor to witness that if you only talk about the skill level of the sword, regardless of the power, I am afraid that I will not lose it. Taro Supreme. Yu Ding Supreme expressed admiration, but Sun Han's eyes did not decrease by half. This sword move is enough to pose a life and death threat to the Supreme. Unfortunately, it is not enough to look at this seat. Shaking his head, Yu Ding Supreme flicked the dust gently in his hand, and a colorful light immediately waved out, with unparalleled power, blasting the sword in the front. Ha! Suddenly, a huge force of repulsion emerged from this colorful divine light, which was actually breaking the dawning swordsman directly from the original energy to disintegrate and split. The figure of Jian Wushuang was like hitting an invisible glass. The figure sprinting forward was held up fiercely, and then was shot backwards. Jian Wushuang stepped back 3 steps in a row before he stabilized his body and his blood was boiling. Is this half-step invincible supreme? Sure enough, it is much stronger than the top supreme. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and immediately there was no reservation of the whole Buddhist divine power, and the explosion broke out. Come again! A towering warfare exploded around Jian Wushuang as the center, soaring. The next moment, Jian Wushuang appeared on the top of Yu Ding Supreme. The Tai Luo divine sword burst with a strong sword pressure. Sculpture of the worm. Yu Ding supremely hummed, and swiped his right hand on the dust, and all of the white wires in his hand suddenly became vertical, as hard as iron, and turned into the shape of a long knife. Ha! Tai Luo's Excalibur slashed on the duster's long sword, but failed to cut it off, instead pulling up a long string of sparks. The sword is unparalleled. If Taro Supreme holds this Taro Excalibur sword, I'm afraid I will be chopped when I meet him, but Terra Excalibur is in your hands, but the pearl is dusty. After all, the gap between you and me is too big. Yu Ding disdain sneered, and then quickly changed his wrist, one after another splitting 32 knives, 1 knives faster than 1 knives, the sword unparalleled. Mystery, Star River Slash. Seeing Jian Shuangshou retreating, Yu Ding Supreme held Fushin's right hand again, and the Fushin even changed again. Countless white wires grew madly, and the cooperation turned into a steel whip. Crackling. This whip directly blasted a void in the void, and made a clicking sound similar to glass breaking, which caused numerous air machines to stir and set off a violent wind. Immediately, the whip landed on Jian Wushuang's chest fiercely, and his violent power directly ripped his chaotic domineering body, tearing a long slap scar. This scene fell into the eyes of many people who came to watch the war in the distance, and immediately caused a shock. Yu Ding Supreme is indeed a half-step invincible supreme. Whether it is attacking might or fighting skills, it has reached the point of being invincible. This whisker in the hand of Yu Ding Supreme is an imitation of Qianji Fu, one of the 7 ancestors of the 7 handles, which can be changed into any weapon, and the power is only a little weaker than the real Qianji Fu. It seems that the invincible Jian Wushuang has been pushed all the way. This time it is in big trouble. Everyone in the audience was watching, and they started to discuss. The great Emperor of the Sun and the Emperor Haoji took a look of joy in their eyes. Father Wang, it seems that this sword is unparalleled, and it is not a supreme opponent of Yu Ding. Prince Haoji said. The Emperor Dairi smiled and nodded, and his nervousness on his face turned extremely relaxed. Yu Ding Supreme is the super strong who survived the catastrophe and survived, but the sword Wushuang is just a hairy doll with a stinky flesh. With his own talent and some opportunities, he will be fierce for a while. Naturally, it cannot be Yu Ding's supreme opponent. Emperor Dairi shook his head and smiled. On the Starry Sky, www. Novel. Jian Wushuang looked down at the scratch wound on his chest, his eyes flashed, and then he sighed. It is truly invincible in half a step, all aspects have reached maturity, not so easy to deal with. Yu Ding Supreme heard the words, with a touch of irony on his face, saying, Jian Wushuang, do you know the gap between you and me? It's not too late for you to give up, as long as you have a better attitude and are willing to apologize to this person in front of everyone. This one is not incapable of letting you go make your way. Jian Wushuang, this is the last chance this seat gives you, you must know how to cherish it. After that, Yu Ding Supreme looked down at Jian Wushuang, and his eyes were full of condescension. Jian Wushuang heard the words and grinned, only responding to 4 words. Whimsical. Chapter 44-22. Insufferable. Yu Ding Supreme heard that his face sank and said coldly, Jian Wushuang, Since you are so lacking in discipline, this seat will give you the elders of the Temple of Life to discipline you. Huh? With a wave of his right hand, the duster in his hand turned into a magic pen, and stroked in the void in front of him, directly drawing a pattern of Jin Changkan's Yin and Yang Tai Chi, mystery, a seal. Yu Ding uttered a low sigh, turned the dust brush in his hand into a heavy brush, and cast a heavy weight on this Yin and Yang Tai Chi pattern. Suddenly, this Yin and Yang Tai Chi moan uttered a low groan, which sprang up into the air, and then continuously zoomed in, rising in the wind, and in just a few breaths, it was like a cloth curtain covering the entire sky, all blocked. After doing all this, Yu Ding Supreme stepped on his feet and flew up, turning the dust in his hand into a giant axe, and splitting down towards the sword Wushuang. Talents, primitive universe. Jian Wu's eyes captured the hunting and hunting warfare, directly turning on the talented supernatural powers. Instantly, a strong force came to the world, turning the surrounding void into a dark magnetic field. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's breath soared again, and the movement of Yu Ding Supreme's flying split could not help but stagnate. It is this stagnation, Jian Wushuang said coldly, Chopper Star, boom. Sen Lon Jianmong condensed in the hands of the sword, and split it instantly with a strong sword pressure, and the starry sky was split directly, as if passing by the sea. Yu Ding squinted his eyes narrowly, and then sneered, what a surprise, but unfortunately, it didn't work for me. Qian Jifu change. He drank aloud, and in a flash, his hand turned into a duster of a giant axe, and the white wires suddenly spread out, like a girl's loose flower, making a clicking noise, and the next breath, these white wires merged and turned into a prismatic shield will protect Yu Ding Supreme. Huh! The star-slicing sword slashed on the shield, and suddenly made a loud noise shaking the mountain, as if the whole universe directly caused a 10,000 magnitude earthquake, a force of shock, flying along the shield, spreading to all directions. The fight between these two men is terrifying. In a short time, among the people who watched the battle, those who did not reach the highest level of supremacy were violently retreating backwards and backwards, slamming their sleeves to withstand the violent shock waves. The Yu Ding Supreme has already stepped after blocking the star-cut Jianmeng, like a tide of smoke, rolling towards the sword Wushuang. In the eyes of the sword Wushan, the mansion skyrocketed, and the Tai Luo divine sword swept across the 99 swords, tearing the sky, arrogant sky, and killing Yu Ding Supreme. The two instantly fought with more than 100 moves, one with sharp swords, the other with magical powers that destroyed the world, and the whole universe seemed to be destroyed, and one black void after another was exploded. The speed of both of them was extremely fast, and even the crowd of the audience had already worked hard to capture the movements of the two with their eyes. I saw that the sword with no hands in the sword continued to chop and stab, and the sword shadows overlapped, like a dream, giving a very beautiful feeling. And the dust brush in the hand of Yu Ding Supreme is ever-changing, once transformed into a long knife to tear the sky, once transformed into a giant axe to open the world, and once transformed into a spear to sweep the world. The two keep moving from this star to another star, just like the two divine powers that cross each other. The collisions that occur again and again produce the surrounding stars into powder, as if to reopen chaos and make the universe boil. These two are too strong. Yu Ding Supreme is worthy of being a half-step invincible supreme. Before the great emperor of the sun, there was no way to deal with the sword without hands, but Yu Ding Supreme was able to cope with it. He was not afraid of Sword Master, and even suppressed Sword Master. The real horror is Jian Wushuang. Think about it, Yu Ding Supreme has cultivated thousands of chaos periods before he has such a powerful strength, but how long did Jian Wushuang practice? 700,000 years. More than 700,000 years, Jian Wushuang can be indistinguishable from Yu Ding Supreme. What is this concept? This seat is closed a little, it will take 700,000 years. Fortunately, the two did not make a shot in King City, or let's not talk about King City. I'm afraid that the entire kingdom of God's day will die out instantly. The gap between people is really too big. The audience were all amazed, Some supreme masters who had been cultivating for a long time and looked at the surging Jian Wushuang, their hearts even gave birth to a kind of frustrated sigh. Jian Wushuang, let's die. Yu Ding's supreme frowned, seemingly bored, and Jian Wushuang continued to cling to it, his hands quickly printing method. Extreme Divine Art, Purple Shao Mantra. Suddenly, a golden yellow curse was condensed in the void, and an extremely powerful coercion detonated the quartet, which was enough to subject the world and the world to surrender. The next moment, this curse is as if one person was carrying two giant tripods, coming towards the sword Wushuang. In the void, he was directly blasted out of an annihilation channel. Cut! There was a dignified meaning in the eyes of Jian Wu, and he even cut 9 swords to open the sky. Stop this curse. The first sword, let the speed of this curse be slightly slower. The second sword on this curse had a fissure the size of a hair. Third sword. The fourth sword. After the sword Wushuang 9 swords came out, this curse could no longer hold on, first shaking, then violently, and the countless spirits of the Chinese race shot at the universe in all directions. Call. Swordsman slightly relieved, rare sweat beads appeared on his forehead. 9 swords in succession, but his exhaustion of the whole body of the power to split it is no small drain on him. And just then, Jian Wushuang, let's die. A loud laugh sounded. Immediately afterwards he saw the Emperor of the Sun turned into a fireball, slammed it into the sword, and smashed it on the body of the sword Wushuang. This blow is the great save of the great Emperor of the Sun, and he will kill the sword unparalleled. Ha! Suddenly, under this great force, Jian Wushuang flew upside down, directly penetrating a star in the distance, and then flew down thousands of feet again and then stopped. I saw a hole in the size of Kuju on Jian Wushuang's chest, and countless Mars burned on him. Tick-tick. The blood of countless tyrants fell along this wound, and continuously burned black holes in the void, burning a burst of white smoke, and permeating Jian Wushuang's body. Dairy! Yu Ding Supreme's complexion changed slightly, and he looked a little displeased to the Emperor of the Sun. He used to deal with the sword unparalleled, even if he bullied the small, but the Emperor of the Sun still attacked. If it spreads, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? I want to talk with more like-minded people to Sword Master Wandao. WeChat pays attention to reading literature, to read novels, talk about life, find friends. Chapter 44-23. Extreme Yu Ding. It'll be foolproof until I kill this little thief together. I promise to double your benefits later, okay? Emperor Dairy said with a smile. After hearing this, Yu Ding Supreme found his face a little slower and shook his head and said, "The sword is unparalleled now, but it is the end of a powerful crossbow. It is no longer a threat. He can't live today." The words of the crickets fell. Yu Ding's expression was indifferent, and he walked step by step towards the sword unparalleled, ready to cast his final killing blow. The Emperor Dairy and the Emperor Haoji walked on both sides, his eyes filled with murder, and the corners of his mouth evoked a sneer of pleasure. The three of them joined together and approached Jian Shuang quickly. In the distance, everyone watching the scene saw this scene, and his face suddenly changed. It's really shameless. Jian Wushuang is just a junior supreme. Why even join hands? This great Emperor of the Sun is also the leader of one side of the power, the top and supreme. I can't think of it so unbearably, and the front is defeated by Jian Wushuang, so I sneak attack while taking advantage of the swords. It seems that the great Emperor of the Sun has already hated the sword, unparalleled hatred, and has done everything. Someone said scornfully. There are others who sighed and shook their heads. It's no wonder that the big day, since Jian Wushuang decided to come and settle in the big kingdom of the big day, this scene should be thought of. It's just a pity that Jian Wushuang is in such a vertical position that it should be the treasure of my universe, but it will fall here unexpectedly. Jian Wushuang is too arrogant and too arrogant. If I were him, I would hide in the dark, wait until the ceremony of the ancestors passed, all the guests left, and then find a chance to slowly map it. It's just a pity that sword is unparalleled, and chose one of the most arrogant and high-profile, and the easiest way to gather fire. Everyone whispered and talked differently, but in general, almost all of them were unworthy of swords. Crackling. Each step of the Emperor Tyree fell into the void with a muffled sound, as if a dying approaching, proclaiming the death of Sword Unparalleled. Sword Unparalleled, aren't you the first genius in the universe? Aren't you going to settle down my kingdom of the great god of God? Let's take another look at it. The Emperor Prince Haoji said with a smile on the corner of his mouth and said ironically. But Yuding Supreme said with a blank expression, Jian Wushuang, I admit that you are strong, but unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong opponent and should not be your enemy. In the eyes of the three men, all of them emit different light, or indifferent. They are confident that under the joint of the three, Jian Wushuang is undoubtedly dead. The smoky waves of the sky gradually dispersed. The three of them are distanced from Jian Wushuang, but they are 10 feet away. Then, at this moment, a quiet voice sounded from the smoke waves that had not completely dispersed. I didn't want to use this sword, I intend to leave it to Bingyu. But why? Why do you have to die? Huh? The next moment, the smoky waves of the sky suddenly shattered, revealing the indifferent figure of Jian Wushuang. The blood hole blasted out by the Emperor Dairy in his chest has been restored, exuding bright golden light, as if the perfect body of heaven. With his hands in his hands, the eyes of the Taro Excalibur's hilt were spreading wide. A huge surge of sword pressure was released from the Taro Excalibur. Sword Unparalleled. Suddenly, the three of Yuding Supreme stepped together and their pupils shrank. I do not know why, they felt a breath of enthusiasm on Jian Wushuang. Wu Jianwushuang's expression was indifferent. He ignored them, but looked up at woody starry sky, then closed his eyes slowly, and said silently, Third Sword of Terra, Dusk. Alas! There was a wind between heaven and earth. The sword has no Taro sword in both hands. Starting from the point of the sword, it becomes sandy and disappears gradually. The whole world, falling into stillness. The stars that were originally suspended in the universe seemed to have lost their gravity and began to fall, as if they were about to fall into an abyss. What is this? The Emperor Dairy and the Emperor Haoji noticed anomalies and frowned. A feeling of palpitations, constantly amplifying in their hearts. I just know that no matter how they release their magic power to spread around, they can't feel where this feeling of consciousness came from. I only know that it must be related to sword warriors. And Yuding Supreme, it is an instant change of face. The Emperor Dairy and the Emperor Haoji did not know what was going on, but how could he not know who had witnessed Taro Supreme dominating the universe in person? This is simply one of the 5 unique skills that Tai Luo Supreme dominated the universe. Kendo magical power, Tusk. At that time, Tai Luo Supreme used the evening sword to slaughter 3 major races with one sword, making the universe horrified. Originally, with the fall of Tai Luo Supreme, the sword-like magical power of this terrible crying ghost was also sealed. I didn't expect it to be opened again by Jian Wushuang today. Escape! Su Yuding's eyes widened, and he burst into a drink at the Emperor of the Sun and the Emperor Haoji. At the same time, he stepped his right foot, and the dust in his hand instantly turned into a shuttle, allowing him to step under the foot and fly away. The speed was extremely fast. What? The brief encounter between the Emperor Dairy and the Emperor Haoji was immediately understood in his heart, and it must be that the Supreme Master Yuding noticed the existence of danger, and this was the case. As a result, the two of them also performed magical powers and wanted to escape. Late. Wu Jianwushuang slowly opened his eyes. Under his feet, the void slowly sunken, forming a giant pit, and then began to spread out at a very fast speed. Rumble. This pit is like a giant beast with a wide open mouth. A suction that can't be resisted is transmitted from the center of this pit. Countless stars, countless galaxies, everything suspended in the universe have lost control, fell into this crater, and died silently. The night will be replaced by the dawn, and the sun will fall into the arms of the night. The middle process is dusk. I have already shot 1,000 miles away from the great Emperor of the Sun to see this scene, and suddenly the scalp became numb, and his liver and gallbladder were cold. Next moment, Stopping his original sprinting motion, the huge suction from the pit that wiped out everything in the world is like an invisible arm, dragging him back. He obviously still keeps sprinting forward, but the whole person keeps retreating and then falling, until it fell into the entire pit. It wasn't just him, but also Prince Haoji, who watched the war a little closer, fell into one after another. It's not over yet. Including the Yu Ding Supreme who first reacted, and the farthest flew away, was also dragged back and fell into the pit in the unwilling roar. No. Sword warriors, I will not intervene in this matter, you let me go. When Sun was about to fall into the pit, Yu Ding Supreme stared at Jian Wushuang and said, "Late." Wu Jianshou shook his head, his eyebrows were cold, then his lips opened slightly and he spit out a word. Buried. Chapter 44-24. Burial. The sword with no pair of feet is empty, with both hands quickly stamping, coldly drinking. When this sentence fell, the pit, like a black hole in the desert, began to collapse quickly. Reaching the point where Jian Wushuang is now, Kendo magical power is no longer tied to swordplay. In the universe, a loud noise was heard. First, the stars that were swallowed into the pit began to smash and annihilate one by one, turning them into nothingness, and then the weakest Prince Haoji was squeezed by heaven and earth, and the body collapsed and shattered instantly. My father saves me. Shouting in horror, Prince Haoji shouted. On the verge of death, the Prince Haoji was extinct in form and spirit, leaving only his tragic sounds echoing in the universe. Haoji, my son. For a moment, the Emperor of the Great Sun was about to crack and his eyes opened. After the Emperor Shao was beheaded and killed by Jian Wushuang in the ancient road of the sky, the Emperor Haoji was the last effort of the Emperor Dari, and he was the heir to the Emperor. Even if there is no such thing as Jian Wushuang, the Emperor of the Sun is ready to launch the Emperor Haoji as the Emperor at the ceremony. His love for Haoji, even less Emperor. Now, in the presence of his Prince Haoji died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The last words of help of Prince Haoji, like a sharp knife, poked into his heart. He is an emperor, he is the top and supreme, he is in the universe, and is in charge of thousands of life and death. But he is even more a father. At this moment, the Emperor Haoji dies in front of him, and the Emperor of the Sun is crazy. Sword unparalleled, you it? The Emperor Dari raised his head, and through the huge pit, he looked at Xiang Jianshuang, and the resentment in his eyes condensed to the extreme. It looks like you're in pain? Ji Jian looked at him with no expression on both sides, and a corner of indifference radiated from the corner of his mouth. Don't worry, you will be reunited with your son soon. The collapse speed of the pits has become faster. There is a devastating force formed by sword gas, which is constantly harvesting vitality in the pit. Evening twilight, everything withered. I have fallen into this night forever. This is the true meaning of the evening sword move. Howling. Howling. The Emperor Dari is running supreme divine power, resisting the offensive brought by the evening sword move and roaring constantly. I was stunned by him, and it was like a raging atmosphere. It was quickly annihilating, and it was also expensive to be the top 10 universe gods, constantly opening cracks and leaking air. 10 breaths passed. The body of the Emperor Dari finally began to explode inch by inch, and in the end only one skull remained, staring at the sword unparalleled. Sword unparalleled, you must not die of the king's curse. You go to Huangquan as you go up and down. My king curses you. He did not wait for him to finish, and the head of the Emperor Dari exploded like a cracked watermelon. The vitality belonging to the Emperor of the Great Sun disappeared. At this moment, there was still a rumbling boom in the pit, but everyone watching the battle in the distance seemed to be deaf. Looking at this scene blankly, his mouth could be stuffed with an egg. It wasn't long before someone trembled with his lips. Big. Great Sun Emperor, how did a generation of magpies fall like this? Big Sun Emperor, but in the universe, the little one who stood at the peak, died like this in a sword without hands? The Emperor Shao died, the Emperor Haoji died, and the Emperor Dari died. I'm afraid that in the future, There will be no place in the universe for the great D-God kingdom. It's terrible. How strong is Jian Wushuang? Countless people said in shock. They turned to look at Jian Wushuang, with only deep awe in their eyes. Evening sword moves did not end, but continued. Because there is one person who is still supporting, that is Yuding Supreme. Inside the pit, a blast of destruction slammed into Yuding Supreme. While Yuding Supreme sat cross-legged in the void, the dusting silver wire in his hand spread rapidly and then grew like an eggshell and wrapped Yuding Supreme in it. No matter how violent bombing of the sword energy at dusk, he stood still. Jian Wushuang, this move is really powerful, but unfortunately, it is still the same sentence, you have done too much for me, and you cannot use the combat power that this move deserves, otherwise, one face-to-face will be beheaded. Qi Yuding shook his head with pity and then shook his head, then said, Sword unparalleled. Now that the great Emperor of the Sun is dead, and your resentment has been reported, why not let this seat go out? Is it possible that you have been consuming here with this seat all the time? When Sun said here, the corner of Yuding Supreme's mouth evoked a slight meaning. There is no expression on both sides of the sword, and I have to say that this Yuding Supreme is really powerful. Even at dusk, he can't completely kill it. I was silent for a while. Jian Wushuang said, Yuding, do you remember what I said before? Okay. After hearing the words, Yuding Supreme squinted his eyes and asked, What is it? Wu Jianshou glanced at him lightly and calmly replied, I once said that if you block me, I will kill you. Do you think I'm joking with you? Boom. Suddenly, the deep pit that killed countless lives disappeared. Taro sword, reunited in the sword without hands. However, before waiting for Yuding Supreme's face to burst into joy, he was suddenly replaced by an unprecedented panic. Terra Sword Code, 4th Style, 4 Seasons. Wu Jian stared coldly at Yuding Supreme, and Moran opened his mouth. In a short time, the entire universe regenerates and changes. The entire star air temperature suddenly dropped by thousands of degrees. It is in all directions, blowing strong cold snow and icy miles of stars. For a moment, the world seemed to be in the middle of a cold winter. Countless snowflakes exuded a bitter coldness, falling from the air. Each snowflake is a season of sword spirit. This is the 4-season swordsmanship. Suddenly, Yuding Supreme was terrified. If Jian Wushuang used the dusk sword move before, he was just shocked, now he is scared. 4-season sword moves, seemingly unremarkable, far from the momentum of the first 3 swords, but no matter in terms of intention or power, it is far from being comparable to the first 3 swords. It can be said that from the beginning of the 4-season sword move, it is a huge watershed. The 4-season swordsmanship is like a needle hidden in cotton. A beautiful and delicate snowflake fell. Yuding Supreme raised the whisk in his hand, and just to stop it, he saw the snowflake and passed through the dust directly and silently, reflecting on his body. Suddenly, the place where his deity was touched by snowflakes was directly frozen, and even the divine power could not work. Ji Yuding's extreme complexion changed instantly, and he did not wait for him to change again. The 4-season sword move had changed again. Chapter 44-25. Boom! A spring thunder blew. The 4-season sword moves suddenly regenerate and change, cold winter melts, and turns into a warm spring silent. Alas! The icy snow and cold snow gradually faded away, and what turned to be was a drizzle of drizzle falling from the air. Long winter, warm spring, hot summer, cold autumn. The 4 major solar terms are the 4 sword meanings implied in the 4-season swordsmanship. It's obscure and complicated, it's profound and profound, far beyond anyone's imagination. Nuanchuan is not the sword of the 4-season swordsmanship, but it is the most dangerous sword. Hunshan's solar terms, all things recover, beneath the peaceful surface, cruel killing and plundering are hidden. Rumble. In the universe, at this moment it seems that the entire starry sky has disappeared. There are continuous spring rains falling and spring thunder roaring constantly, as if playing a song of destruction. Sun Yuding held the whisk in his hand and stared at the world around him. The rain falling in the sky is sword air, and the thunderous thunder is sword air. Even the gentle wind that blows is sword air. Sword after sword, dense, filling the world. Avoidance is inevitable, ambush on all sides. For just half a column of incense, the Yuding supreme deity was severed by countless sword chi, and a blood rain fell like a blood man. His hair was loose, his robe was thin, and the wolf was trembling to the extreme. Sword unparalleled, do you really want to endure with this seat? Su Yuding looked at the footsteps to the void, like the sword master of the heaven and earth, cold voice. Wu Jinsho glanced at him lightly and replied, if you can survive this sword, how can I spare you my life? Okay. Jian Wushuang, this is the reason you were not afraid of this seat before, right? But you must forget that not only you in the world have a killer, but this jade also has it. Qi Yuding took a deep breath, and there was no slight contempt in his eyes, and he turned into an incomparable dignity. Next moment, speak him word by word, Supreme God, Jioding Township. Break me. Suddenly, Yuding's supreme body was flowing, and countless avenues of truth evolved in his eyes. He had a very strong breath, soaring again and again. In the void, 9 giant tripods are suddenly gathered. These 9 giant tripods are quaint and magnificent. As soon as Fang appears, it is like a Dinghai god who suppresses the sea of anger. Continuously puffing the cold mang, turned into the sword chi eroded by the spring rain, at the same time collapsed a whole 100,000. This supernatural power is the most powerful extinction of Yuding Supreme that relies on the universe. He once used this supernatural power to make a half-step invincible Supreme and instantly kill. The name of his Supreme Jade Tripod comes from this magical power. The void seems to be unable to bear these 9 giant tripods, crushed inch by inch. Burning! Qi Yuding Supreme exhausted his whole body strength and sang. Suddenly, these 9 giant tripods were like Xingyuan Shenlong, dripping and spinning, soaring into the sky. These 9 giant tripods are linked to each other, and the tripod within the tripod continues to muffle, as if the drums of war in the ancient heavens were beaten, making people deaf. Boom! The next breath, 9 giant tripods exploded at the same time. A majestic force that could not be described with any force was blown away, turned into a shock wave that destroyed the world, and swept the quartet. Under this force, whether it is the continuous spring rain, or the spring wind that stirs up or down, or the spring thunder that thunders. Crush all at the same time. Good skill. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, half a step back. His fists were all pulled out, his fist photographed the bright golden light, and the purple Sichuan word in the eyebrow was even more dazzling. Come! Jian Wushuang's fists were smashed out fiercely, and the shock wave that swept at him continued to crash. Every punch is sinking to the extreme with great power to hit the planet. Wu Jian Wushuang is like a warrior on the coast to meet the tide. No matter how this shock wave slaps, he will break it one by one. And the 4-season sword spirit destroyed by Yuding Supreme did not dissipate with it, but began to evolve again. Winter to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. For solar terms, endless, and cycle each other. Once the 4 seasons of sword chi are generated, it will be to the death. This is also the strongest point of the 4-season sword energy. It is not like dawn and dusk, it will explode all attack powers at the same time, causing a devastating blow. It is like a grinding disc, which moves slowly, but constantly destroys the vitality of the enemy. After a few breaths, a round of scorching sun rises, and a scorching and violent force rushes towards the face. The entire starry sky began to become red. Yuding was supreme, and the whole body began to ignite white smoke. Just like withered flowers and bones, the skin gradually became dry and dull, and his hair fell down. The whole person, as if to be roasted and dried, the blood began to boil, and then smoked. A big terror between life and death, madness breeds in his heart. Sword unparalleled, stop. I confess to you wrong. I shouldn't get involved in your affairs with the Emperor of the Sun. Let me go. From now on, wherever your sword is unparalleled, my Yuding retreats and respects you as a god. Let me go. At this moment, all the pride and dignity of Yuding Supreme is shattered, leaving only the fear of death and the desire for survival. He looked at Jian Wushuang in despair, his face full of begging. Want to ask for mercy now? Jian Wushuang glanced at him lightly and shook his head. I'm sorry, my sword Wushuang has always reported this to me. If you want my life, I will kill it. Dead. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stretched out 5 fingers forward towards the void and grabbed it fiercely. Huh! Suddenly, the scorching sun, which was transformed into a sword by the 4 seasons, burst into flames and crashed into Yuding Supreme. Instantly Yuding's supreme face is earthy and pale. In a blast of earth-shattering thunder, the Tai Luo Excalibur was severely inserted into the chest of Yuding Supreme. Immediately Yuding Supreme disappeared. Half-step invincible Supreme Yuding, fall. Hit him, he is the highest person who died in the sword without hands. This 4-season world evolved from the Terra Excalibur gradually collapsed. The Terra Excalibur turned into a golden light, flew back, shot into the sword without hands, and was held by the sword. The whole starry sky turned into a dead silence. Wu Jianwushu held the Taro Excalibur, a feeling of hard-working connection, uploaded from the Taro Excalibur. Get stronger? Yen Jianwushuang faintly felt that after the Tai Luo Divine Sword slayed Yuding Supreme, it seemed to become stronger by 1 point, becoming even more enchanting. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang remembered what Wu Jianxian said to him at the Feast of Life Shrine. The horror soldiers of Jijideo, their horrors, are constantly becoming stronger. Terra Sword is the one that the main palm kills among the 7-armed ancestors. Killing. Can Taro Sword become stronger? Wu Jian's eyes flashed a little thoughtfulness, and he immediately pulled a sword flower, inserted the Terra Excalibur into the Terra Sword sheath, and let the scabbard warm the Terra Excalibur. 9 Heavenly Emperors. Chapter 44-26. In the void there was silence. Only the strong wind kept echoing. I have retreated to the distant spectators, watching this scene blankly, only to feel cold all over the body. The Prince Hao Ji died. The Emperor Dairi died. Even in the universe, Yuding Supreme, who is half-step invincible Supreme Master, is also buried in the hands of Jian Wushuang. He could not use any words to describe the terror in their hearts. Originally, Jian Wushuang once dominated and killed the Supreme, it was shocking enough, but now, Jian Wushuang has begun the Supreme practice and beheaded and defeated. This is too shocking. In the universe, these things have never happened before. Whether it's the first day of the 100,000 chaos before the Chaos Era, or the 9 Calamity Kings, who were also considered to be wicked Tianjia before, it is far less than the current sword unparalleled, 1,000 miles away. The universe seems to be really changing. The beginner Supreme cuts and kills the half-step invincible Supreme. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it. The first day of eternity is proud. Countless years from now, the entire universe will remember a name, that is, Swordsman. Legend. Jian Wushuang is a legend. From today onwards, there will be one more person on the top of the universe, and that is swordless. Invincible Supreme is not out. I'm afraid Jian Wushuang is enough to sweep the universe. Countless people spoke. At this moment, they looked at Jian Wushuang, who had black hair in the distance, and their eyes filled with strong worship and fanaticism. I even have a monk, dazzled and venomous. If it had not been rumored in the universe, Jian Wushuang had already married, and I was anxious to rush up on the spot and make a wife for Jian Wushuang. No one who is present will be a fool. Jian Wushuang is powerful and amazingly talented. No one dare to say how amazing Jian Shuang's future achievements will be. If it wasn't for the existence of the dragon race, Diwu Temple, etc., which are hostile to Jian Wushuang, I don't know how many people in the universe want to go online with Jian Wushuang and form a good destiny. Now, after Jian Wushuang slashed half-step invincible Supreme Yuding, these people are suddenly brave, no more scruples. Well, swords have been practiced for more than 700,000 years without both sides, and they have the power to slay half-step invincible supremacy. If sword warriors are practiced for more than 700,000 years, this dragon may not be their opponents. The dragons have been comfortable for too long, and they think they are too long. It is time for people to teach them. They are not the masters of the universe. The dragons are powerful, but they are nothing more than that. A few surviving second-generation dragons can only rest on their lives. Although the remaining 3 generations of dragons are strong, they may not have the opportunity to lift them until the swordsman Wushan has fully grown up. I am convinced that after 10,000 chaos ages, this universe will belong to swordless. Countless people's eyes were burning and their tone was firm. Immediately, they looked at each other and walked towards Jian Wushuang, planning to form a good destiny. Among them, the guests who came to participate in the ceremony of the ancestral ritual of the Emperor of the Sun were running fast, fearing that Jian Wushuang would be angry at them, and he had to explain it quickly. Wu Shuang Supreme, the supreme promise of the golden sword of the promise, I would like to say hello. Wu Shuang Supreme, the owner of the island of Xiaoweo, hereby apologizes to you for paying tribute. It is really my ancestor who has an old age with him. For a moment, all kinds of sounds to please Jian Wushuang sounded one after another. These people, without exception, are all middle level or above. However, at the moment, they are facing various swordsman flatterers, and they are not afraid of being disrespectful. If this scene falls in the eyes of an unsuspecting person, it will definitely make people downcast. Jian Wushuang's expression was dull. These people were just the grass on both sides of the wind. It is the best to see the wind to make the rudder. Fortunately, today they have won. If they lose, these people will definitely be cut by Yuding Supreme and others. After killing, spit and spit. He didn't bother them too much. Jian Wushuang took a right-handed shot into the void, and suddenly the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding's supreme Chengkuan ring shot at him. After grabbing the Chengkuan ring, Jian Wushuang's divine power swept slightly inside, and his expression couldn't help moving. The wealth of these 2 men is really scary, even when the supreme thunder has not yet begun, and when many of his treasures have not yet exploded. They are far worse than these 2. These 2 people are afraid of relying on their own cultivation to become strong and others a lot of opportunities. Wu Jianshou snorted coldly, then shook his head immediately, closed the 2 Chengkuan and turned towards the great sun god kingdom. The sword warrior turned into a sword across the sky suddenly, like a meteor passing, and fell into the country of the great god of the sun. Day City King. Many people who did not rush out of the starry sky to watch, and the royal children who stayed behind in the great sun god kingdom, are discussing with each other. They have a relaxed face, a relaxed attitude, and even a leisurely cup of tea. It seems that they have no fear of losing the Emperor Dairy and others. Queen, His Majesty the Emperor, they haven't returned for so long, won't it happen? A guard of the great sun god kingdom said with some anxiety in his eyes. The queen was a beautiful woman, and when she heard that she put down her teacup, she said arbitrarily, Jian Wushuang's thief is only an elementary supreme cultivation, how can he be your majesty's opponent? Not to mention this time, there is Yuding Supreme to assist. Friend Jianshou has the ability to pass through the sky, he will bow down this time. This. The guard couldn't help hesitating and said, Queen, for the sake of insurance, I think we should go and see. When Queen Dai heard her words frown, she was about to rebuke. At this time, with a loud bang, a low voice exploded like a thunder and rolled down. The Emperor Dairy is dead, and other people of the Dairy royal family are also guilty. Although they will not die, they should be cut and cultivated to serve the purpose. The figure of Wu Jian's unparalleled united in the void. Instantly, countless children of the family of the king of the big sun god split their hearts, and couldn't believe it. The queen of the big sun was overwhelmed in an instant. How can it be? How could your majesty be defeated? Wu Jianshou's expression was indifferent, his black hair fluttered, and he stood proudly in the void. He glanced down at Dai King City, and immediately shook his head, splitting it with a sword. This sword deprives you of cultivation. Boom! Suddenly, the sword was split, and it seemed to cause no harm, not even a single tree or a tree, but it was directly in the invisible, and it was chopped on everyone who was in blood with the Emperor of the Sun. This sword is a variant of Yongye sword. He has the power to deprive everything. Shinai is a little magical power that Jian Wushuang promoted after he realized the sword intention of Taro Supreme. My cultivation. What's going on? Why is my cultivation fading? No! For a moment, the Japanese palace was screaming again and again. Countless people feel their fast-removing cultivation, and their faces are terrified. Those who came with the sword unparalleled noticed the scene, even more shocked, cold all over. Ijin cut to repair. What kind of ghost and means? You know, the Dari royal family has a total of nearly 10,000 people. Wu Jianwusu looked at them lightly and split the 4 swords again. These 4 swords rise into the sky and then hide in the void. From today to the next 90 million years, all people of the royal family of Dari shall not step out of the palace of Dari. Dalian Imperial Palace, closed for thousands of years. The 4 sword ons hidden in the void, the sword tip turned, and will kill anyone who dares to step out of the big Japanese palace. Instantly, countless people of the Dari royal family looked desperate, as pale as earth. Wu Jianwushuang said no more. As soon as he stepped, he turned into a ray of light. Chapter 44:27. Jian Wushuang left. He left only a messy great sun god kingdom and countless disciples of the great sun emperor. When he entered the city was full of joy and everyone smiled. After he was out of the city, the ruins of the wall were broken, and a piece of white clothing was ravaged. At this moment, countless monks who are still staying in the Dari King city, watching the Dari King family who was sealed by the 4 swordsmen, suppressed their hearts for a while. They know that the great sun god kingdom is over. 90 million years. For a total of 90 million years, you must not step out of the palace. What is this concept? For the supreme supremacy of Gongshan, although 90 million years is long, but it is not unacceptable, but for the children of the Dane royal family who have been deprived and degraded to mortals, 90 million years are countless. Reincarnation, thousands of generations. This represents them, they must never stand up forever. Do not. Countless children of the royal family of Dari Kingdom in Dari Imperial Palace all showed despair, and the Queen of Dari fainted to the ground instantly. After a high king, I ordered the world not to dare not, and to become a mortal who is going to experience old age, sickness and death, which is even more painful than killing her. Among them, the children of the Dane royal family who are fortunate to try to practice, are shocked to find that a prohibition has been planted in their bodies, blocking all their paths of practice. It's really over. At this moment, countless people fell to the ground, looking desperate and desperate. A few days later, Wu Shou Wushuang in the great sun goddess country, cutting the great sun god emperor, the most supreme thing in Yuding, spread throughout the universe at a very fast speed. In a hurry, there was an uproar in the universe, with thousands of people shaking and the world sensation. The sensation caused this time is far more than anything in the past, even enough to compare the war at the gate of the Temple of Life. The Emperor Dari died in the sword without hands. It was nothing. Although they were surprised, they had not reached the point of horror. The impact of Zhu Yuding's extreme fall is too big. Sun Yuding is supreme, half-step invincible supreme cultivation, famous in thousands of prehistoric times, who survived the war of catastrophe. Of course, at the time of the Holocaust, Yuding Supreme was still weak, but the Supreme did not officially participate in the Holocaust, but Rao is so, he is also an ancient power. It is such a powerful hand and eye that has died in the swordless hands that have practiced for more than 700,000 years. This is really shocking. Sword, unparalleled gifted strength, ancient times have not. I have the longest rank in the universe, my lips tremble, my eyes shook. Today's sword is unparalleled. As long as the invincible is invincible, I'm afraid that no one can stop him in this universe. After someone took a deep breath, he said so. Fast. Pass this edict. From now on, all my disciples of Shenzong will meet Jian Wushuang to evade the three houses. Even when wandering the universe, see other disciples of life in the palace. You must be polite. 3 points. Do not offend. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will cause me a terrible disaster. There is one master who is regarded as a hegemonic figure in the universe. 3 orders were issued on the same day, each of which is about swordsmen. There are also Zhongsho who once put words in the universe, who must die under the oppression of the dragons, or who had participated in the strangulation of Jianshou Shuang, either announced an apology directly in the universe or sent someone to the Temple of Life to apologize and apologize. Some of them are immortal dharma, some are ancient holy places, and some are a kingdom of gods. They are usually giants in the universe, and they control the existence of life and death, but at this moment, they all showed their favor to Jian Wushuang. From the moment when Jian Wushuang beheaded Yu Ding's supreme, Jian Wushuang is no longer the junior bully in their eyes, but another giant arm rising from the universe, enough to set foot on the top of the universe. And those forces that have a good match with the sword, such as Jiuding Pavilion, Xingkong Jianzong, Jiuxing Holy Land, Mola Clan, and so on, also announced that the universe, they will reach an alliance with the Temple of Life, and become all the fans behind Jian Wushuang. At this moment, countless people were shocked to discover that, without knowing it, Jian Wushuang is already a lame person who can stir up the cosmic situation and beat the power of the universe for 9 days. Countless top forces, tied to him. As a person, there are still people in the universe who watch from the wall. Although they no longer say some words of derogatory sword Wushuang, they are sneering in their hearts. Sooner or later Jian Wushuang will still die in the hands of the dragons. Anyway, the situation in the universe changed all the time, all kinds of speeches emerged endlessly, and the word, sword warriors, occupied all the topics of the universe. In the universe, a lonely starry sky. A cosmic boat is constantly breaking through the waves and galloping fast. Qi Jian Wushuang did not stay in the spacecraft, but stood on the deck of the spacecraft with a negative hand, allowing him to be brushed by the fierce wind. He had black hair and was screamed. Yan Jianwu looked ahead, his eyes blinked constantly. From the perspective of this battle, my strength should be the ultimate. Wu Jian's eyes filled with speculation, constantly recalling the details of the fight with Yu Ding Supreme. In that battle, except for the last move of Tai Luo Jiandian, which was at the bottom of the box, Tara was not used. He almost came out. As for other magical powers, similar to the chaotic power in the Wu Ding Chao Ding, etc., even if it is useful, it will not affect the result. The Tai Luo sword is the card that Jian Wushuang prepared for himself, and if the dragons really come out from the strongest group of strong men to hang him, this whole card that has never been used may be a critical moment. Keep him alive. Unless forced, Jian Wushuang will not use the Taro sword trick. Even with this sword trick, even now, he hasn't fully comprehended it. Once he used it, he didn't know what the consequences would be. Out of control too much. But even so, I have a self-protection in the universe. Thought of this, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. At this moment, neither side of the sword thinks that he finally has a bit of self-protection in the universe. Today, he can't say that he can sweep the universe, but those who are hunted down can only hide in Tibet. I'm afraid it's gone forever. After a short while, Jian Wushuang opened the bamboo tube handed to him by the Supreme Master of Blood. Among them, the third page is marked as Qiang Kingdom. Qiang Emperor, half-step invincible supreme, famous in the 3000 chaos prehistoric era. Qi Jian Wushuang pedaled the universe boat and continued to march towards the Qiang God Kingdom. Qiang Divine Kingdom is his third goal. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 44-28. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was driving the cosmic boat and constantly driving towards the Qiang God Kingdom. Many eyes in the universe are also placed on the Qiang Divine Kingdom. Through the first 2 times of Jian Wushuang's crusade, they can be regarded as coming. Jian Wushuang went all the way to the door to kill the target, from weak to strong. For example, the first dead Blood Temple Master was the weakest and weakest of the 6 forces that had stabbed Sword unparalleled in the first place. The remaining 5 forces, with the exception of the great Japanese Emperor, who has already died and died, have the weakest strength to reach the half-step Invincible Supreme. Qiyang Divine Kingdom, it's over. Countless people shook their heads. Qiyang God Domestic. Father, what shall we do now? Your Majesty, you speak. There was chaos in the palace hall. Countless leaders and ministers of the Qiyang Divine Kingdom, including the descendants of the Qiyang Divine King, looked desperately, sitting on the throne of the Qiyang Divine King. As soon as the news that the sword defeated the great Emperor of the Sun and Yuding Supreme was released, it was like a thunderbolt on a sunny day, and it blew up on everyone's head in Qiyang God Kingdom. Even the top and supreme great Japanese Emperor and the half-step invincible Yuding Supreme are dead. What is their resistance to the Qiyang Kingdom? At this moment, countless people in Qiyang God's heart are filled with endless remorse. But why do you want to provoke Jian Wushuang? Okay, don't bother. Qiang Shenjun has a square face, and the whole person is full of self-anger. He patted the armrest of the throne heavily, glanced coldly at the hall, and was frightened by the name Jian Wushuang as if shaking a quail, and snorted coldly, "At the beginning, I was going to flatten the Temple of Life. Strangling the sword is unparalleled. It is the most powerful of your clamor. I want to share a cup of tea after I level the Temple of Life. Now the sword is infinitely powerful, and everyone has not come yet. You are so frightened that everyone is in danger, and everyone is ashamed." As soon as this remark came to an end, the original mess was restored to a quiet place. Everyone present at the meeting bowed their heads and did not dare to look directly at the Qiyang God. Where would they want to know? The sword master Wu Shuang, who dominated the realm, had a leap and had the supreme practice of beheading and invincible. Okay, all of them will stop a bit. The sword is unparalleled, and this seat will naturally find a solution. Qiang Shenjun took a deep breath and said, "Shensheng, report." At this moment, a will hurriedly blast from outside the hall and step into the hall. "Your Majesty, Jian Wushuang is already far away from Qiyang Divine Kingdom, less than 3-star domains, and will arrive today." The will look up at the Qiyang God, his face panicked. "Is it so fast?" Qiang Shenjun's pupils shrink and become slightly discolored. Immediately, he got up and stood up, looked around at the people in the hall deeply, and said coldly, "You are here to take it with you. What is the punishment of the sword unparalleled? Just one person bears it." In the complex eyes of everyone in the hall, Qiang God stood up and walked towards the outside of Qiang Palace. He hadn't waited for him to leave the palace, and a low, indifferent voice exploded loudly over the whole city. "Sword of Life Jingu Sword is unique. Come here to visit the kingdom of Qiyang." As soon as this remark came to an end, it was as if a heavy bomb had been dropped in the great sun god. Countless people's faces changed greatly, their faces turned pale, their bodies shook like sieve bran. "Here comes, Jian Wushuang comes." The discoloration in the eyes of Qiang Shenjun flashed for a moment, and then he recovered his calmness, swept up in one step, and landed on the wall of Qiyang King City. After all, he is the man who stands at the top of the universe. He has been accustomed to the undulating waves for a long time. Although Jian Shuangshuang is strong, he is not so scary as to smell him. "Jian Wushuang, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Qiang Shenjun stared at Jian Wushuang with complex eyes, and said with a deep voice. He didn't call this seat anymore. It means that he put the sword Wushuang in a position equal to him. The sword came from both heaven and earth, hunting in black, squinting at his eyes and wondering, "Wait for a long time?" Qiang Shenjun nodded his head and replied, "The sword is unparalleled. The world is the strongest. You were humble at first, but I deceived you to conform to heaven. Now you are better than me, and I have nothing to come to anything can be said, willing to admit punishment." "Oh, you are frank." Wu Jianshou carried his hands and looked at him with a smile. Qiang Shenjun looked at Jian Wushuang and did not express his attitude. There was a struggle on his face, and he bit his teeth. Sword unparalleled. No matter how angry and murderous you may be, I am the one who bears the burden of Qiang. Let me go and leave a little room for me. After saying that, seeing Jian Wushuang not talking, he took a deep breath, and seemed to have made a decision, and said again, sword unparalleled. As long as you don't want to be angry with my descendants of Qiang, strip them of cultivation, I will be willing to self-discipline. As soon as this remark came to an end, many people in Qiang who watched this scene in the Qiang royal palace were breathing stagnation. They didn't expect that Qiang God would be willing to make his own decision for them. Even the sword unparalleled, all brows slightly. Practice all the way, the more you get to the back, the more selfish and ruthless you are. As long as you can build the avenue, most people do and talk about blood relationship, even parents and relatives can testify. Su can be like the Qiang who is willing to sacrifice himself in order to preserve his blood. Few ancient times. But when he turned his head, Jian Wushuang also wanted to understand. I am afraid that this Qiang Shenjun knows that it is impossible to escape today and is doomed to fall, then it is better to let his fall to exchange some chips and die. More valuable. He groaned for a moment or two. Jian Wushuang looked at the Qiang god, and replied slightly, yes. Hearing this, Qiang Shenjun was relieved, but glanced at Jian Wushuang gratefully. Thank you. Then, the Qiang monarch turned his head suddenly, looking at the many descendants of the sorrowful people in the imperial city of Qiang. Chuanin scolded. Remember, this place is falling behind today. You must act in a low-key manner, be safe and secure yourself, withdraw from the depths of the universe, practice well, you must not mention a word of revenge. You guys understand? The voice of the Qiang gods, like a bang and drink, exploded in the minds of every descendant. These grandchildren heard the words, and immediately realized that the death of the Qiang had been settled. No. Qiang Shenjun no longer cares about them, but looks at Xiang Jian Wushuang, grinning with a grin. Sword unparalleled, remember your promise, let them go. The reason that I planted on the day, I taste the fruit today. Im Qiang, go too. He stretched out his hand and patted his brow with one palm. Chapter 44:29 One sword to banish the mortal world. The void was deathly silent. Only the strong wind continued to reverberate. The spectators who had already retreated far away looked at this scene in a daze and felt chills all over their bodies. Great Sun Prince was dead. The King of Day was dead. Even Supreme Jade Cauldron, who was a half-step unrivaled supreme and had an all-powerful cultivation base in the universe, had been killed by Jian Wushuang. No words could describe the shock in their hearts. Originally, it was already shocking enough that Jian Wushuang had killed a supreme when he was an ultimate ruler. Now, Jian Wushuang, who was a beginner supreme, had killed a half-step unparalleled supreme. This was too shocking. Such a thing had never happened in the universe. Whether it was the number 1 genius from 100,000 chaos cycles ago, the East Boundary, or the 9th Kulpa King, who had been regarded as a monstrous genius, none of them could compare to the current Jian Wushuang. Jade, it seems like the universe is really going to change. An elementary-level supreme killed a half-step unrivaled supreme. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Number 1 Heaven's favorite of all time. From now on, the entire universe will remember one name, Jian Wushuang. Legendary. Jian Wushuang is a legend. From today on, there will be one more person at the peak of the universe, and that is Jian Wushuang. If the invincible ruler doesn't show up, I'm afraid Jian Wushuang will be able to sweep across the universe. Countless people spoke. At that moment, they looked at Jian Wushuang in black with deep adoration and fanaticism in their eyes. There were even female cultivators who were dazzled and seeing stars. If it were not for the rumors in the universe that Jian Wushuang had already married, they would have rushed forward on the spot and become his wife and concubine. No one present was an idiot. Jian Wushuang was powerful and had amazing talent. No one dared to say how amazing Jian Wushuang's future achievements would be. If not for the fact that Jian Wushuang's enemies, such as the Dragon Clan and Cosmos Temple, Many people in the universe would have wanted to get close to Jian Wushuang and form a good relationship. But now, after Jian Wushuang had killed the half-unrivaled Supreme Jade Cauldron, these people suddenly became bold and fearless. Jian Wushuang has only cultivated for 700,000 years, but he already has the strength to kill a half-step unparalleled Supreme. If Jian Wushuang is allowed to cultivate for another 700,000 years, the Dragon Clan may not be his match. The dragon race has lived in peace for too long, and they've been arrogant for too long. It's time for someone to teach them that they're no longer universe masters. The Dragon Clan sounds powerful, but it's just that. A few second-generation dragon clans who have been struggling to survive can only rely on sleeping to keep their lives. The remaining third-generation dragon clans may be powerful, but when Jian Wushuang grows up completely, he might have a chance to overthrow them. I'm certain that this universe will belong to Jian Wushuang after 10,000 chaos cycles. Countless people's eyes were burning as they spoke with determination. Then, they looked at each other and walked toward Jian Wushuang, intending to form a good relationship with him. Among them, there was a concierge who came to the ancestor-worshipping ceremony. He ran quickly as he was afraid that Jian Wushuang would vent his anger on them. He quickly tried to explain. Supreme Peerless, I'm Supreme Golden Saber of the Limitless Divine Sect. I've come to greet you, Supreme Wushuang. I'm the Island Master of Five Turtle Island. I'm here to apologize to you. My participation in the Great Sun God's ancestral worship ceremony is because my ancestor is an old friend of his. All of a sudden, all kinds of fawning voices were heard. These people were all experts above middle Supreme Master level. However, they were all flattering Jian Wushuang and dared not show any disrespect. If this scene fell into the eyes of an uninformed person, it would definitely make one's eyes pop out. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. These people were just grass on the wall that swayed with the wind. Fortunately, he had won today. If he had lost, these people would definitely have spat at him in disdain after he was killed by Supreme Jade Cauldron and the others. Jian Wushuang didn't pay much attention to them. He extended his right hand and the interspatial rings of Emperor God of the Great Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron flew toward him. After grabbing the interspatial ring, Jian Wushuang used his divine power to scan the inside of the ring and he could not help but be moved. The wealth in their interspatial rings was simply terrifying. Even before the Supreme Lightning Tribulation had begun and he had many supreme treasures to self-destruct, he was far inferior to these two. These two people must have stolen many opportunities from others because of their powerful cultivation. Jian Wushuang snorted and shook his head. He put away the two interspatial rings and turned to the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Jian Wushuang turned into a sword light and crossed the sky like a shooting star. He then fell into the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Within Great Sun Divine Kingdom, many people who had not rushed out of the starry sky to watch, as well as the royal descendants who had stayed behind to guard the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, were discussing. They looked relaxed and even had the time to drink tea. It seemed like they were not worried that the King of Day and the others would lose. Queen, His Majesty the Celestial Emperor and the others haven't returned after such a long time. Could something have happened to them? A guard from the Great Sun Divine Kingdom said with worry in his eyes. The queen was a beautiful woman. She put down her teacup and said casually, Jian Wushuang is only a beginner supreme. How can he be your majesty's opponent? Moreover, with the help of Supreme Jade Cauldron, Jian Wushuang will be executed no matter how powerful he is. This, the guard couldn't help but hesitate for a moment before saying, Queen, for safety's sake, I think we should go and take a look. Hearing this, Great Sun Queen frowned and was about to reprimand him. At this moment, accompanied by a loud rumble, a deep voice exploded like thunder and rolled down. The King of Day is dead. The other members of the Great Sun royal family are also guilty. Although they are not dead, their cultivation should be cut off as a warning to the others. Jian Wushuang's figure condensed in the void. In an instant, countless descendants of the Great Sun Heavenly King's royal family were scared out of their wits. They couldn't believe it. The King of Day's face turned pale instantly. How is this possible? How could His Majesty be defeated? Jian Wushuang's expression was cold and his black hair was flying in the air. He stood proudly in the void. He looked down at Great Sun Divine Kingdom, shook his head, and slashed down with his sword. This sword will strip you of your cultivation. Boom. In an instant, the sword did not seem to cause any damage. It did not even move a blade of grass. Instead, it directly cut into everyone who had the bloodline of the King of Day. This sword move was a variant of the Eternal Night Sword move. It had the power to strip everything. It was a small superpower that Jian Wushuang had derived after he had comprehended the sword essence of Tarot Supreme. Arg. My cultivation. What's going on? Why is my cultivation level declining? Don't. In an instant, the King of Day Imperial Palace was filled with screams. Countless people could feel their cultivation levels rapidly declining, and their faces were filled with extreme shock. The people who had come with Jian Wushuang noticed this scene and shivered all over. One sword to cut off his cultivation. What kind of supernatural method was this? One must know that there were nearly 10,000 people in the Great Sun royal family. Jian Wushuang looked at them indifferently and slashed out 4 sword lights again. The 4 sword radiances shot up into the sky and then hid in the void. From today on, for the next 90 million years, no one from the King of Day royal family is allowed to step out of the King of Day palace. The King of Day Imperial Palace has been sealed for tens of millions of years. Buzz. The 4 sword radiances hidden in the void turned their tips and would kill anyone who dared to step out of the Great Sun Imperial Palace. In an instant, countless Great Sun royal family members' faces turned ashen. Jian Wushuang did not say anything more. He took a step forward and turned into a ray of light. Chapter 4430. Inside the Universe's Starry Sky. Wu Jianshou piloted the spacecraft and kept moving forward. He sat cross-legged in the space capsule, frosty between his eyebrows. Extreme. This person is definitely one of Jian Wushuang's most wanted to kill. If you say that the Lord of the Blood Temple, the Emperor of the Sun, the Emperor of the Red Sun, and others are only accomplices, then the Supreme Master of Bingyu is the culprit. White Tiger Supreme is forced to explode by being forced by Bingyu Supreme. The feud between him and Bingyu Supreme is not shared. I do know how many times Bingyu Supreme led his team to hang him, such as the one in the wild wilderness. If it wasn't for the white-haired ancestors, I'm afraid it would be dead at that time. There is an earlier Shinkong ancient road, and the prisoner dragon is the Bingyu Supreme sent to kill his sword Wushuang. If this is not the case, his sword Wushuang will not gradually face the dragon. Of course, sword Wushuang has no regrets and no fear, but his heart hates Bingyu for his supremacy. Waiting to kill me in Taishu Temple? Wu Jianshou sneered. This word was issued by Bingyu Supreme to the entire universe. He also heard the words similar to the war books. This made him kill Bingyu Supreme, and suddenly took him to another level. Even to this day, this Bingyu will never die. Very good, my sword is unparalleled to see. How do you cut me? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and flashed a sigh of coldness. I was inside the temple of the virtual god. Su Bingyu sat on the throne with a sneer on the corner of his mouth and rubbed a blue magic sword blade in his hand. This sword, the name of God. At that time in the wild wilderness of the universe, he strangled Jian Wushuang, but was killed halfway by the patriarch's ancestors to save them. His saber, the ice sword with the same name as him, was even inched by the patriarch's ancestors. Swallow. And this sword named, he later spent a large price to buy from an invincible supreme, in terms of power is not inferior to the original ice dagger, or even stronger. Sword is unparalleled. Take you and sacrifice this sword. Bing's extreme turned over with his right hand, pointed his sword at the void outside the temple, capturing the hunting chill. Don't wait for this seat to break through the invincible supreme, otherwise any life shrine, any hegemonic ancestor, you must die for this seat. He chuckled in his heart, and was equally worried about the overlord ancestor who destroyed his magic sword and blasted him with a punch. Come here. After a short while, he put away the Excalibur and called out. Da-da-da. Suddenly, a disciple of the Taishu temple stepped in and congratulated. I ask you, where is Sword Warrior now? What's abnormal? The disciple was lying on the ground and heard the words and said, told the Lord Emperor, Jian Wushuang is rushing to Taishu temple quickly, and there is nothing unusual. Ah, that's good. Bing nodded supremely and sneered softly. Swords warriors, so eager to find dead people, this seat is the first time in the universe to see. Wu Jianshou drove the cosmic boat and approached the temple of Taishu continuously. Along the way, he didn't have any intention of covering his breath, so everywhere he went, there was a burst of exclaim. You see, this and this breath is sword unparalleled. The goal of Jian Wushuang, it really is the temple of two virtual. Well, Bingyu Supreme is not a bad stubble, this battle looks good. Jiang Wushuang is strong, but Bingyu Supreme is also a hard bone. The half-step invincible Supreme who died in the hand of Bingyan Supreme is more. It is really hard to say if Jian Wushuang can take down this hard bone. Jian Wushuang's own creation. If Jian Wushuang can kill, pay attention to killing the Ice Cricket Supreme, then Jian Wushuang can almost be determined, now he is the first person below the Supreme Master. Walk around, this battle is nothing short of ancient and ancient. It is rare and must not be missed. Hurry to Taishu Temple, it's lively this time. I heard that all the major forces have all sent people to watch the war. Once Jian Wushuang really wins, they will hold Jian Wushuang as the new king. Countless people's eyes are eager and open to discuss. Afterwards, they all drove Shiguang and swept away towards the Taishu Temple. Among them, there are representatives sent by the major forces who have brought the Shuangguang mirror, intending to record all the details of this battle. Even the three masters and apprentices who were saved by Jian Wushuang in the Terra ruins today came to cheer for Jian Wushuang from the extremely distant wilderness. There are also Emperor Jinwu, the leader of Shaking Mountain, the Lord of Stardust, etc., one after another who has no origin with swords. This battle is highly anticipated. After 3 months, Jian Wushuang arrived at the star field where the Taishu Temple was located. The puppet star field is already full of countless people watching from all directions, and the flag is rolling like waves. Wu Jianshou stopped the spacecraft and stepped out of the cabin. There was a loud noise in my ears, and many familiar faces. Master Bloodsword, come on! How Emperor dominated his face excitedly, shouting from a distance. Bloodsword, you will win. The water which dominated the three, and his face turned red, crowded at the outermost part of the crowd, and waved the flag to cheer. Sword does not abandon your lord, be careful. Stardust, who was already alone, dominated, and clenched his fists. Wu Jianshou looked for a moment, glanced over the familiar faces, and then smiled. Rest assured. Wu Jianwushuang nodded toward them, then turned to look at the central position of Taishu Starfield, the suspended Taishu Temple, taking a deep breath. This sucking, like a whale sucking water, all the powerful wind energy around you into your mouth. Next moment, he opened his mouth to make a sound, as if the sound of a thunder blasted, rolled down, shocked for 9 days and 10 places. Bing Gao, haven't you come to death yet? Boom! As soon as this remark came down, the miles of the sky were shaken by the earthquake, like a tsunami. Swords matchless, you it today. Immediately, a cold voice came out of the center of the Taishu Temple, and the rolling sound of the sword warriors was completely defeated. A white streamer burst out and landed 10 feet in front of Jian Wushuang. The streamer shattered, revealing the supreme figure of the moraine. Sword unparalleled, only one of you and me today can walk out of this star field alive. Bing stood with supreme negative hands and frowned. Just what I want. The sword flickered in the eyes of Wu Jian, holding the Taro Excalibur in his right hand, and pulled it out of the scabbard an inch. A magnificent sword pressure came to the audience instantly. Come on. Su Bingji snorted extremely coldly, turned his right hand over, his body was scarlet, and the evil spirit reached the extreme sword, condensed in his hands. There is no nonsense in between. The two powerful auras, as if forming a substance, continued to squeeze in the void collision, setting off a horrible void storm. When everyone watched the battle, their eyes were stunned. They know. This battle of ancient times is about to begin. Chapter 44:31 Committing Suicide at the Same Time. Just as Jian Wushuang was steering universe boat toward the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, many gazes within the universe were also focused on the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Through the previous two crusades, they finally understood that Jian Wushuang's targets grew from weak to strong. For example, the Blood Sky Hallmaster, who had died first, was the weakest of the 6 forces that had killed Jian Wushuang. He had the weakest foundation and was only a top supreme. As for the remaining 5 forces, apart from the King of Day, who had already died, the weakest of them had already reached the half-step unparalleled supreme level. The Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom is finished. Countless people shook their heads. Within the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Father, what should we do now? Your Majesty, say something. The Imperial Palace was in chaos. Countless commanders and ministers of the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom, including Scarlet Sun Demon Master's descendants, looked at Scarlet Sun Demon Master on the throne in despair. The news that Jian Wushuang had killed the Emperor God of Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron was like a bolt of lightning that struck everyone in the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. Even the Supreme King of the Great Sun and Supreme Jade Cauldron had died. What could the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom do to resist? At that moment, endless regret welled up in the hearts of countless people in the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. But why did he have to provoke Jian Wushuang? All right, stop quarreling. Scarlet Sun Demon Master's face was square, and his entire person was filled with a sense of authority. He slammed the armrest of his throne and glanced coldly at the people in the hall who were trembling like quails because of Jian Wushuang's name. He snorted and said, "Back then, when I was going to flatten the Divine Life Palace and kill Jian Wushuang, you were the ones who made the most noise. You wanted to get a share of the loot after I flattened the Divine Life Palace. Now, Jian Wushuang is powerful. He hasn't even arrived yet, but you're all so scared that you're all in danger. It's really embarrassing." As soon as he finished speaking, the originally chaotic hall immediately returned to silence. Everyone present lowered their heads, not King of Day, to look at the Scarlet Sun Demon Master. How could they have imagined that Jian Wushuang, who was only at the ruler realm, would have the cultivation to kill a half-step unparalleled supreme with a leap? Alright, let's all calm down. Since Jian Wushuang is here, he'll naturally find a way to solve it. The Scarlet Sun Demon Master took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Report." At this moment, a divine general rushed in from outside the hall and entered it. "Your Majesty, Jian Wushuang is less than 3 star areas away from the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom. He will arrive within the next few days." The divine general raised his head and looked at the Scarlet Sun Demon Master with a terrified expression. "It's so fast." The Scarlet Sun Demon Master's pupils shrank, and his expression changed slightly. Then he stood up and looked at the people in the hall. He said coldly, "You guys stay here. I will bear all the punishment for Jian Wushuang." As soon as he finished speaking, the Scarlet Sun Demon Master stood up and walked out of the Imperial Palace under the complicated gazes of everyone in the hall. Before he could walk out of the palace, a deep and cold voice exploded in the sky above the entire Yunwu city. "Jian Wushuang from the Divine Life Palace is here to pay a visit to the Scarlet Sun Divine Kingdom." His words were like a bombshell in the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Countless people's expressions changed drastically. Their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled like screaming chaff. "He's here, he's here. Jian Wushuang is here." The Scarlet Sun Demon Master's eyes also lost color for a moment before he regained his calm. He took a step and landed on the city wall of the Scarlet Sun Royal City. After all, he was the man who stood at the peak of the universe. He had been a hero for a long time and had long been used to the ups and downs of the waves. Although Jian Wushuang was strong, he was not so strong that he would be afraid of him. "Jian Wushuang, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Scarlet Sun Demon Master looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated gaze and said in a deep voice, "He didn't call me by name anymore, which meant that he regarded Jian Wushuang as an equal. Oh! Jian Wushuang came over with his black clothes fluttering in the wind. He squinted his eyes and asked, "You've been waiting for me for a long time?" The Scarlet Sun Demon Master nodded and replied, "Jian Wushuang, in this world, only the strong are respected. Back then you were weak, so I bullied you. I was following the way of heaven. But now, you are stronger than me. Even if you come to me, I have nothing to say. I am willing to accept my punishment." "Hee, you're quite frank." Jian Wushuang looked at him with a faint smile. Seeing that Jian Wushuang didn't express his opinion, Scarlet Sun Demon Master seemed to be struggling. He gritted his teeth and said, "Jian Wushuang, no matter how angry and murderous you are, I, Scarlet Sun, will bear it alone. Let my descendant go, and leave some leeway." After that, he saw that Jian Wushuang did not speak, so he took a deep breath, as if he had made a decision, and said again, "Jian Wushuang, as long as you don't vent your anger on my descendants and strip them of their cultivation, I am willing to commit suicide." As soon as he finished speaking, the people of Scarlet Sun who were watching the scene in the Imperial Palace held their breaths. They had never expected that the Scarlet Sun Demon Master would be willing to commit suicide for their sake. Even Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows slightly. On the path of cultivation, the further one cultivated, the more selfish and emotionless one would become. As long as one could cultivate the great Tao, an ordinary person could even cut off their parents and Tao companions to verify their Tao, let alone blood and kinship. There were very few people like the Scarlet Sun Demon Master who were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to preserve their bloodline. However, Jian Wushuang quickly understood. The Scarlet Sun Demon Master probably knew that he would not be able to escape today and was destined to die. In that case, it would be better to exchange his death for some bargaining chips, so that his death would be more valuable. After a moment of silence, Jian Wushuang looked at Scarlet Sun Demon Master and replied indifferently, "Yes." Upon hearing this, Scarlet Sun Demon Master heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Jian Wushuang with gratitude. "Many thanks." Then, the Scarlet Sun Demon Master turned his head and looked at his descendants and clansmen in the Imperial City who had long been in grief. He rebuked, "Remember, after I die today, you must keep a low profile, behave yourselves, and leave the depths of the universe. Cultivate well, and don't mention anything about revenge. Do you all understand?" The Scarlet Sun Demon Master's voice was like a blow to the head, exploding in the minds of every descendant and clansman. When these descendants heard this, they immediately understood that the Scarlet Sun Demon Master had already decided to die and was leaving behind his funeral arrangements. The burly man couldn't help but say, "No, no." Scarlet Sun Demon Master didn't care about them anymore. Instead, he looked at Jian Wushuang and laughed bitterly. "Jian Wushuang, remember your promise and let them go. Ill taste the consequences of the seed I planted that day. I, Scarlet Sun, will go." Bang! He stretched out his hand and hit his forehead. Chapter 44-32. Jian Wushuang's eyes closed slightly, Baoxiang solemn. The tailored Excalibur in his hand, as thin as smoke and sand, began to dissipate from the point of the sword. A feeling of palpitations suddenly amplified in everyone's heart. Good coercion. It will change. Rewind. Instantly, the audience members who had already retreated far away retreated backwards and opened the distance. Oh! Sun Bingshuan's eyes, which originally had no waves in the ancient well, narrowed for the first time, revealing a slight shock. Huh! The land under Wu Jianhui's feet began to collapse rapidly around him. A crater is constantly spreading out at a very fast speed, like a cosmic black hole that swallows everything silently and silently. Huge gravitational force is transmitted from the center of the vortex of the pit, and it continuously swallows all kinds of energy in the starry sky. All quietly next, it turns into nothingness. Even the sun that hangs high in the sky and the dazzling Milky Way across the sky hundreds of millions of miles is driven by this gravitational force, rolls in, and then falls into a giant pit. A sword at dusk, the gods at dusk. The ice mast, who was standing above the void and was constantly thinking about it, was suddenly pulled by a big hand and was dragged into the pit instantly. Suddenly, the hearts of everyone watching the game shivered. In the face of this move, how can everyone not know that the original Yuding Supreme was dragged into the pit of the dusk, and then he lost his initiative? Without the power of World War I, he could only be used by the power of the pit of the dusk. Continue to pass away, and finally was executed by Jian Wushuang's 4-season swordsmanship. Immediately, the strong face of the Taishu Temple shouted sharply, "Sword unparalleled! Let our God Emperor come out. Thus, otherwise, don't blame me for waiting." Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, glanced at them scornfully and sneered, "It's up to you?" The words fell, Jian Wushuang stretched out his fingers and bowed a little, and suddenly a sharp sword blasted out from his fingertips, hitting the shouting loudest elementary supreme strong. "Huh!" Suddenly, this sword gas passed through the eyebrow of that elementary supreme powerman. The sharp sword in tension crushed every inch of the god's power in this person's body. "You!" Instantly, this elementary supreme powerman, before he said a word, collapsed his body and destroyed him. Instant seconds. Suddenly, the other powerful men in the Taishu Temple shrank their pupils and dared to reach out and tremblingly pointed at Jian Wushuang, but they did not dare to say a word. After finished all of this, Jian Wushuang turned his head, looked indifferently to the extreme icy supreme, and slowly extended his hand forward to grab the void. Buried. Boom! Suddenly, the pit at dusk turned on, and a powerful horror reached the extreme majestic strength, squeezing and colliding towards the ice mass supreme. Under this tremendous force of squeezing and collision, even though he is as strong as ice cricket, his body is shaking, and there is a little flush on both sides of his cheek. Next moment. Sword unparalleled. This trick is okay against others, but you can't trap me. Bing Extreme sits cross-legged, takes a deep breath, and then sighs coldly, "Supernatural power, frozen world." Click. With this sentence falling down, the cold mang on Bingyu's supreme sword, and a piercing chill permeated by the naked eye pervaded, but the energy of the direct void was frozen. In the void, suddenly ice. For a short period of time, the ice dipper is sucked in the center, and the twilight pits that are squeezed continuously are frozen and frozen, just like eggshells. Bing stood up and stood up, a cruel arc evoked in the corner of his mouth. Supernatural power, sky wing of ice. Broken. In an instant, Bingyu Supreme stepped on his feet and shot out of the dusky pit that was so deep that it rose into the sky. Beneath his feet, it was frozen into a glacier-like dusk pit, and suddenly collapsed and shattered, like a heavenly girl's scattered flowers, forming a rolling avalanche and scattered around. It's not hard to see that with this hand alone, Bingyu Supreme is better than that supernatural powers, mirror flowers and water moon. Bing Supreme reopened. Sword of God in his hand waved down, time, starting from him, just like copy and paste, there were thousands of ice cream supreme like him. Sword unparalleled, let's die. The next moment, the words were sent out from the mouth of these thousands of ice cream supremacy, forming a terrifying sound wave, as if the gods opened their mouths and lowered their reproofs, making them deafening. Kill. Huh. Then, the thousands of Ice Dipper Supremes stepped at the same time, holding a sword to kill from all sides. For a moment, the dreadful sword energy was as suffocating as the billowing waves. Is that so? Jian Jianhui's eyes narrowed, and he didn't dare to magnify his heart. He tried to spread his divine power and feel the thousands of Moraine Supremes, which one is the real body, but he couldn't help discovering them. Each of these Moraine Supremes, whether it is the strength of the divine power or the vitality of the breath, is all exactly the same. Unable to help, Jian Wushuang frowned. In the distance, the spectators watched the scene with scorching eyes. There is an old strong man who knows the Supreme Bingyu, and he suddenly said, Bingao Supreme's trick is different from those inferior avatars. It looks like a lot, but it has been defeated. In this trick, there is a full blow from Bingao Supreme in every fake. Absolutely cannot be underestimated. Then these tens of thousands of Bingyu Supreme avatars, isn't that Bingyu Supreme tens of thousands of full blows and use them at the same time? Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Yes. The veteran strong eye that had spoken before flickered nodded. This is not the most troublesome. The most troublesome thing is that the true Moraine Supreme is still hidden in it. Once Jian Wushuang is tired of coping, when his power is exhausted or his mind is exhausted, he will give Jian Wushuang a real fatal blow at any time. Prevention is inevitable. Avoid inevitable. When this remark came to an end, all the people watching each other looked at each other. Some said unbelievably, well, that doesn't mean that Jian Wushuang will die? The veteran strong nodded his head and shook his head and said, there is no absolute thing. If Jian Wushuang has any tricks and can kill these tens of thousands of clones at the same time, then this technique will be broken naturally. As soon as this remark came to an end, instead of having a happy face, everyone's face sank. These avatars of Bingyu Supreme are not those low-level avatars that are merely flower racks condensed with divine power, but each avatar contains the full power of Bingyu Supreme, and if the sword Wushuang wants to destroy it at the same time if there are thousands of avatars, it means Jian Wushuang, and it will have the power to hit the ice mastiff with extreme strength. How easy is it? Suddenly, those who are no match for the sword, such as Hao Ember, Jiao Xing Zi, Water Witch Master, apprentices, and Star Master, all clenched their fists tightly, and a heart reached his throat. At this moment, countless people were silent. Wu Jianzhou has fallen into danger. Chapter 44-33. Huh. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of Ice Moth Supreme virtual shadows are flying away, killing the sword unparalleled. Wu Jianshuang's face sank, his eyes flashed with dignity, and he did not dare to have the slightest intention, and directly opened the strongest state of Chaos Ba. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's pair of purple and gold eyes soared, and the eyebrow, Chuan, became more and more prominent. On his body, a series of crisscross ancient patterns appeared. Broken! Wu Jianshuang yelled loudly, raised his fist and blasted towards one of the Ice Moth Supreme virtual shadows, and the majestic strength fell like a waterfall. Huh! Suddenly, the sky was shaking. That virtual shadow shattered one after another, and Jian Wushuang was also shaken, his face pale and uncertain. He didn't allow him to rest for a while, and the second ghost had already hit him. Qi Jian Wushuang had to sideways avoid. After half a column of incense, Wing Jian Wushuang gasped slightly, with a few more scars on his body, looking at the still overlapping ice mastiff, the supreme shadow, and his thoughts flashed. ICNT go on like this? Although each of these ghost images is not strong, and only contains the blow of the supreme ice cream, there are too many ghost images. If you continue to fight like this, I'm afraid I will be dragged to death here. I took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang did not hesitate again, and said lightly, Torah Sword Code, 4th Style, 4 Seasons. Howl Dash. As soon as this remark came to an end, within a square of a circle centered around Jian Wushuang, it turned into long winter. Countless snow falls, and shoots at that ice supreme virtual shadow. This is not over yet, Jian Wushuang yelled again. Talented, amazing life. Talent of magic, primitive universe. Boom. Suddenly, two extremely powerful amounts of repression came to the world again. This world is completely controlled by Jian Wushuang. I saw the icy wind and snow transformed by the 4 seasons sword gas. Under the blessing of the primitive universe and the shock of life, the power suddenly rose again, the wind screamed, with Mori Han's murderous power, fell on every path of the ice masked supreme. On the ghost cart. Suddenly, the thousands of icy phantoms froze, and the action of attacking and killing the sword unparalleled became sluggish. This is... The ice mastiff, who was hidden among thousands of people, suddenly changed his face slightly. He also felt the strong force of ice cold. Under this ice-cold power, even his movements became a little slow. It is rumored that Taylor Supreme has left a total of 5 peerless methods to suppress the universe. This move should be one of Taylor Supreme's 5 masterpieces. 4 seasons sword energy. The thoughts of Bing Binx's eyes were quickly considered, and the contempt for Jian Wushuang in his heart gradually disappeared and turned into dignity. 4 seasons turn. Qi Jian Wushuang quickly drew his hands and drank again. Suddenly, the severe cold snow disappeared, and a spring thunder blew out of nowhere. Then, countless drizzles fell from the sky. This drizzle directly covered the entire Taishu star field. There was doubt in the eyes of a strong man in Taishu Temple, and he reached for a drop of raindrops. Ha! Instantly, this raindrop pierced his entire palm. Not good. This is sword spirit. Rewind. Suddenly, the man shouted in surprise. Then, the Ice Mastiff's supreme virtual shadow, which was slightly frozen by the midwinter sword air, was dripped by this overwhelming raindrop, and it suddenly seemed to be cut open by a sword, making a bang, and then it broke apart. For a while, the dense raindrops dripped, like playing a lute in the universe, with small chords like whispers, noisy and miscellaneous bullets, and big beads and beads falling on the jade plate. Where is this spring rain? Obviously a disaster. Just a few breaths. Thousands of Ice Mastiff's supreme virtual shadows crumbled under the dense raindrops, leaving only the true Ice Mast Supreme, constantly flying in the void, while avoiding sword air raindrops, while wielding a sword to resist. Dang 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 dang. The dense raindrops shot directly on the Ice Cream's supreme sword of God, and a sudden sound of iron nails hit the steel plate suddenly. The fine sweat beads swelled from the extreme forehead of Bing Bing, and the pair of ice crystal wings behind him kept waving, and they swept away thousands of feet under one wave. Although he responded to the Wolverine, it did not pose much threat to him. Bin Gao, it seems your strength is just that. Wu Jianwushuang's expression was indifferent, with 5 fingers in one, sneer. 4 seasons, turn again. Boom. Suddenly, with the sword Wushuang's voice falling, the spring rain disappeared, and a blistering day climbed into the stars. There was a rush of heat waves, baking the earth, and the extremely high temperature was enough to bake a supreme adult. Bing Extreme, who was still a little loose, raised it again and looked at the fiery red sun. Walking in the middle of the huge sun, Jian Wushuang stepped into the void, black hair fluttered, and he looked down at the earth. Swordsmanship, his. If it weren't for today, I wouldn't have imagined that this magical power would have evolved from sword energy. Yu Ding Supreme is dead in this trick. I don't know if Bing Ling Supreme can survive. The strength of the sword unparalleled, terrible. The crowd watching from a distance exclaimed. Although they are far away from the sword Wushuang, the powerful surging energy, like the brightest star in the universe, makes them dazzled and convinced. Stop it! Yen Jianwu's eyes flashed sharply, and he waved toward Bingyu with respect. Time. The round of fiery red sun behind Jianwu's body, rumblingly rolled, crushed away towards the supreme Bingyu. This trick is currently the most powerful attack of Jian Wushuang attack power. Sword warriors. Wu Bingyu looked at this rolling, as if the fiery red sun that was dying out of the world, and was instantly furious. Supernatural powers, ice wing protection. Bing extremely opened his mouth and growled. The next moment, I saw the wings that were inserted into his back and formed by the innumerable ice crystals, soared again, and finally, like the same pair of arms, he enveloped the supreme body of the ice moraine, forming an ice shell-like ice cover. Ha! The fiery red sun hit the mask formed by the icy supreme wings, and suddenly made a loud roar that could not be described in any words. This roar is like the anger of thunder, open mouth, shaking the world, and deafening. All the sounds are drowned in this huge roar. Countless people watching the war in the distance covered their ears, expression of pain. Even more people who are low profile will be killed directly by this roar. A wave of shock waves swept past, crushing the numerous temples in the Taishu Temple under the stars directly into powder. This roar lasted for 3 full breaths before it gradually became weak and then disappeared. A huge cloud of mushrooms rose up from the place where Jian Wushuang and Bingyu played against each other, covering all directions. Chapter 44-34. Moraine Supreme fell? At this moment, countless spectators who have recovered have all stared at the place shrouded by that huge mushroom cloud. The sight of was blocked by the mushroom cloud, heavy haze. Even if they exerted their divine power, they could not see through it, and there was a quiet peace inside, without any sound of the Moraine Supreme. Master Bloodsword must have won. The leader is invincible. It is too strong not to abandon your excellency. Seeing this, the master of How Ember and others all couldn't help showing joy and shook his fists heavily. Other watchers are holding their breaths and are afraid to blink. Extreme. Has it fallen? 9 days in the void. Yan Jian Wushuang looked down at the place where the former Bingyu Supreme was, and there was no joy on everyone's face, but his brows gradually frowned. In the monstrous mushroom cloud, he did not feel the supreme breath of the ice mast. As usual, the general breath returned to nothingness, which means that this life machine has disappeared and has fallen. But somehow, Jian Wushuang not only did not feel any relaxation, but he felt a great terror between life and death. His entire body, as if stared at by an ancient and wild monster, was covered with sweat. At this moment, a dull sound of beating heartbeat rang in the mushroom cloud, as if someone sang the drums of Gu Tianting. Ha! 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 This voice is getting louder and louder. To last, roar! The thick mushroom cloud shrouded in thousands of miles was ripped apart. Extreme stride out. Suddenly his robe was torn, his hair was loose, and blood was flowing between his eyebrows. Even the wide wings condensed from ice crystals on the back were blown up. However, he was full of an extremely dangerous and violent breath. Frost froze on his blood-stained face, as if wearing a mask, condensing half of his face. Sword unparalleled, you can push this seat to this point. This seat has to say, underestimated you. Bing Extreme voice is hoarse, unlike humans, as if there are 2 iron pieces rubbing in his throat. It's just a pity that you killed Yu Ding with this trick, but you can't kill me. Qi Jian Wushuang didn't answer. Tai Luo Excalibur silently gathered in his hands, and his vigilance was raised to the extreme. Far away, How Ember, who had already begun to cheer, dominated the others, and the smile on his face gradually solidified. Isn't this dead? Bingao Supreme is worthy of being the strongest in the half-step invincible Supreme. Where is it so easy to fall? Jian Wushuang, there is trouble. And others sighed. Okay, sword unparalleled, this is the end of the game. Sun Bingxian raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang. The corner of his mouth evoked a weird arc next moment. Supernatural power, I am the Emperor. Boom! Suddenly, the Bingyu Supreme body skyrocketed steadily, and the whole person swelled up like an inflatable. 100,000 feet. For a short period of time, Bingyu Supreme Demon stood up and turned into a giant ice giant. The atmosphere of his whole person changed, as if heaven and earth had crowned him, and an emperor crown appeared on his head. He was covered with thick ice crystals all over his skin, as if wearing a heavy armor. He held in his hands a handle made of ice crystals, and a huge ice sword condensed in his hands. He holds the ice sword in his hand, as if holding an iceberg in his hand. At his feet, the sword unparalleled was as small as a cricket ant. Suddenly, countless people were horrified and startled. What magic power is this? I can feel that the current Bingyu Supreme is at least 10 times stronger than just now. No wonder the previous Emperor Taishu was willing to hand over the position to Bingyu Supreme and leave with confidence. It turned out that Bingyu Supreme hid such a killer. Before, I also said that Bingyu Supreme declared the universe and said that it would be too conceited to kill sword unparalleled here. Now it seems that where is this conceit? Obviously I have absolute confidence. And How Ember dominated the others, even more upset. Why? How could this be? Boom. Instantly, Bingyu moved. This move, he stepped on the ground directly, stepped tens of thousands of feet away, and stepped down towards the sword unparalleled. Sword warriors, the magical power of this seat is far from what you can imagine. Bing Extreme laughed lowly, revealing a sense of madness. Beneath this foot, the whole world seems to be under pressure, and every inch collapses. Qi Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and Shen channeled, Dawn. Ka. Wu Jianso again turned into breaking dawn Jianmeng, Yu Jian left, and stabbed on the calf supreme calf fiercely. This sword can cut off the gods. Ding. Countless ice crystals splash, but it is even the layer of ice crystals on the skin of Bingyu Supreme, which cannot be pierced. Cut star. Qi Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to forgive, and the nearly 10,000 forest blue swordsmen gathered in his hands and chopped again. However, no, it's still useless. Everything is useless. Shock the tree ridiculous. Sun Bingji shook his head with a scornful smile and swept his giant foot at will, directly throwing the sword masterpiece of magical powers, slamming it into the air. Wu Jianshuang flew out of his body, and a spit of blood was spit out by him. Come again. Wu Jian's eyes are so wary, his body is full of golden light, and the royal sword is heading towards Bingyu Supreme again. Taro Sword Code 4th Style 4 Seasons. In the void, the heavenly sword gasified into spring rain and came to the world. However, before it was still invincible, the 4 seasons of sword energy was destroyed, but it could only cut off the ice crystals on the top of Bingyu, causing no trace of injury. Stupid struggle. Bing Extreme smiled slightly, and stretched out the ice sword to cut it severely. Instantly, the whole world was filled with this sword. The gigantic air machine makes the universe boil, as if to reopen chaos and create a new world. 4-season sword chi is crushed directly. Boom! Then this sword fell on Jian Wushuang and blasted it. Under this sword, even if Jian Wushuang has a chaotic domineering body, it will collapse. Sword is unparalleled. It is not only you who is a genius in the world, nor is it only one person who possesses supernatural powers. Extremely raised the corners of his mouth. The magical powers of this seat have been cultivated for tens of thousands of years, and you can't catch up, can you understand? After a few breaths, Sword Wushuo deity reorganized. He took a deep breath, stood up from the ground, and looked at the Ice Cream Supreme who was holding a winning ticket. His expression suddenly calmed down. Bing Gao, do you really win yourself? After hearing the words, Bing Bingshen browed slightly, and looked at Xiang Wushuang with an interest, and said, Oh? Jian Wushuang, what other means do you have to make use of it? This one is one by one. It is good. I answered him with Jian Wushuang's calm voice. Next moment, Wu Jianshou opened his hands, closed his eyes, and hugs the world. He had black hair and gradually floated. A quiet, slow voice, word by word, came out of his mouth. Taro Sword Code 5th Style Taro. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.